course, a reminder if something comes up during our meeting to please raise the flag. We have a deputation scheduled for this morning. I understand that Mr. Bain will not be here until 10 o'clock or so, so we're going to carry on and then get back to that when at a convenient time when Mr. Bain is available. And therefore, we're going to flick directly to the consent agenda. And of course, the usual question, is there any items that anybody wishes to pull from the consent agenda or discuss before we contemplate approving? Councillor Hazelton. Sir?
Item G.
Item G. Okay. I'm going to invite you to please go ahead on that item.
So we'll start off with the item with fire and emergency services. So I had a question regarding the AMPS report. So we've got a clean yard bylaw. Looks like there have been 10 violations, 7 of which were for illegal dumping, and I'm wondering. We have people in the community who have expressed concern on properties in the past, but we as council never really get a report on the resolutions to these things so that we can then engage with our residents. So the residents come to us, we do what we are told to do, which is tell the residents to file some formal complaint. And then as of that point in time, we're completely out of the loop. And I'm wondering, is there a way that we can find an opportunity to update councillors who I will suggest are likely in the loop on every complaint or most complaints, but we have no knowledge of what is being done and how it's being done. So I'll start off with that question.
Chief Van Dam.
There are some times where we can update you, but there are some times where we cannot update you due to the enforcement piece that's still going on. And it's more that some of these people that we're dealing with, we have some mental health issues. And they take a substantial amount of time to go through that process to seek assistance in that, and it may be a long time. I can give you one example. It took us 5 years to get one property cleaned up, and you just can't go in and say do this, do that. It was a long process. So I will speak with the bylaw officers and see if we can come up with a way to try to keep you informed on some of the other ones, but there are some that we may not be able to give you a direct where it is.
Okay, I would appreciate that kind of update. I guess one other thing that is relevant to this topic is I've had some residents who have provided complaints. They have told me how happy they were that bylaw enforcement has come in, but I'm going to look at that as a point-in-time transaction because the offender continues to offend after the fact, and so it's not a fix. It's not a long-term fix. It's a point-in-time fix, and I'm wondering how do we, as a township, ensure that an offender who has offended is monitored so that the community doesn't have to continually represent the complaint to bylaw.
So that goes back to a council policy. Council's going to have to tell us that instead of being proactive or being reactive as we are today, we need a complaint, that you want us to go proactive. So there are some things that would go with that. Once we get a property cleaned up, shall we say, or get it into compliance, it's just like a speeding ticket, right? You get caught, you've been found guilty, you do it again, it's the same process. We're running through that right now on a couple properties where we're going at them for the third time. And with AMPS, it's going to give us a piece that once we've had 3 tickets on them, then we have the option now to go to court, and the court can put an order on it.
Okay. So I understand the issue. It would be helpful if you could provide us as council some suggested language on how to be proactive. And I wouldn't suggest we want to be proactive on everything, but where there is, for example, and I'm sure you're aware of the property, if the property is mostly abandoned, you arrange to have people go in and clean it up, which was wonderful, but the property continues to be mostly abandoned, and the property standards violations continue, and the neighbors just get frustrated because they don't want to have to keep complaining and complaining. Whereas if we know that it's a state like that, maybe there's a way that we could modify our instructions to bylaw to be proactive in those kinds of circumstances. So I'm not looking for an answer right this second, just more that I think going forward, it would be helpful where we know we have circumstances like that, that we don't wait for these continued complaints. And it would be helpful if we could get some ideas of language that you think would be useful for you to enable you to be proactive in certain circumstances. So, so I'll leave that if I could with you. I'd like to move on to the planning department, Mr. Whitliff, Director Whitliff. So I was delighted to see and read that you had some virtual meetings with U of T students studying measures to respond to the short, medium, and potential long-term water level oscillations in Georgian Bay. I'm wondering if there is something meaty you can share with us about that, or if not verbally right now, if there is an opportunity to give us an update, because we on the Bay are very concerned with water levels. I'm at the cottage this week. The water levels are getting very close to 2012 levels. We're probably only a foot above that right now. Now, in fairness, there's an east wind. A couple of days ago, we had a west wind, and the water level seemed to be back, and it was okay. But things to understand and how we can work and perhaps cooperate with you and the university would be very much welcome.
Yeah, so certainly. So for council's information, early in the year, staff were connected with, these are graduate students, master's and PhD students from the University of Toronto in the engineering program. The courses they're involved in, while offered through the engineering program, they're multidisciplinary courses. They attract students from a variety of subject areas at the university, led by Professor Alec Hay in the engineering department. So we had the opportunity to collaborate with them. They do course, as part of several courses, they do work to assist organizations, including municipalities, businesses, to deal with risk-related issues. So we have a number of student groups working on different aspects of these various issues and questions that come up with planning and running a township in a place where water levels can fluctuate significantly, with impacts on land use planning, emergency services, impacts on the residents themselves, of course. So that coursework is just starting to wrap up in some of the courses. So CAO Mariotti and I and Jen Schneer had the opportunity last weekend to view one of the presentations. There's another student presentation coming up later in November that we'll be viewing, and it is our intent to bring forward those presentations to council and sharing them with you. The students are looking at these problems from a high level perspective for sure. It's what they refer to as a first principles approach. So they're coming into this with no sort of inherent knowledge or biases. They're just looking at it empirically and from first principles and coming up with they'll be coming up with a set of recommendations, which we anticipate will help us as staff to frame more detailed work and more specific activities, including the official plan and zoning bylaw update to guide that work. So yes, we will be providing council with updates in the form of the presentations from the students, whether that's sharing, most likely in the form of sharing their PowerPoint presentations with you and providing some commentary on them.
Excellent. Thank you very much. One point you might want to kind of tuck away in your conversations is Dr. Cal Fraser has done a lot of work on the impacts of water levels and wetlands, and she has had actually a student do a thesis for her several years ago about the likely, I think it was the financial impacts of water levels in Georgian Bay, how it would impact the communities, etc. So if U of T is doing some work, that's great. I think they would want to know if another university has done some work like this. And I think that an opportunity to connect the two universities might be helpful.
Okay, I'd be happy to pass that along to the students who are currently engaged in the next phase of their coursework.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wojcik.
I think I'm doing this right. Nope. Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps to our clerk, heard Councillor Hazelton in the first part of his questioning to our fire chief, many questions, and wanted our fire emergency services to offer suggestions and documents. I don't think it's incumbent upon a single councillor to do that. I think that would be at the direction of council. And so I'd like you to tell me if there's going to be a resolution on the floor today for that, or is this going to be something that council discusses in COW and comes to council asking for a report? Thank you.
I think we can just leave it at this point that Councillor Hazelton asked a few questions of Chief Bundum. If anything is to come of it, it would have to require council approval, absolutely. This is not the time to get into motions or resolutions. This is just asking questions about the report. So given their conversation, there may be something coming in front of council in the future, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Graziano. Thank you, and through your worship, a couple of questions to our clerk, a few to operations, and one to our director of sustainability, who I do see is online. We'll commence with the clerk. Ms. Way, Resolution C 2024-256. When can we expect this to kick off? As I believe council instructed staff to coordinate this for September.
I don't have resolution numbers memorized to what the topics are.
Fair enough. Allow me to elaborate then. So it's the resolution that outlined we were to meet bi-monthly for council, outstanding council matters, and to address outstanding council matters.
Certainly, those haven't been scheduled for a couple of reasons. One, I did receive your email about it twice. I know you flipped it again last week. It still doesn't provide clear direction on what that tracking document is to look like. Two, I had explicitly asked council members for their availability so I can schedule these things. I've not received all of that information back. And three, when communications had gone out from the CEO and myself regarding the training that was requested coming out of the August council meeting, it was my understanding through that we were going to go through that training before moving forward with all of these extra meetings. So there's kind of a three-part reason as to why that hasn't happened. Perhaps that's a misinterpretation of direction.
Okay, so I'm gonna, if I may repeat my question, when can we expect them to kick off?
At this rate, probably February.
February of 2025?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. May I also ask, I didn't see it on the resolution tracker, and I'm not quite sure why that's not on the resolution tracker. Is there a reason for it not being listed?
I don't know offhand. It may have been marked as closed considering we were waiting for the pending of the training. I would have to go back and look at the tracker.
Okay, I don't think I've seen it to date, but I'll go back in my records and confirm that. COW 2023-002, page 4 of our tracker. And I will, so it's the hybrid meeting attendance and council remuneration review. It identifies here that we were supposed to go through that. The procedure by law was adopted on December 11th, 2023. Staff are to report back to on options for council travel mileage. Curious to know where that is at 650 days open thus far.
That hasn't been a priority for staff given the other workload and the repeat of reports that have had to come back. Council as a whole, Georgian Bay Council at the beginning of this year, not counting any changes that have been made for other District of Muskoka councillors, but Georgian Bay councillors are one of the highest paid in the District of Muskoka, so this wasn't deemed a priority.
Well, 650 days is roughly around 2 years, is that correct?
Correct, but I've also had to bring back the same report multiple times, such as the indemnification report. So having to bring back the same report 4 or 5 times takes up my time in doing that report multiple times as opposed to being able to move on to new projects.
Okay, so the status is pending right now.
Correct.
2023-438, page 4 again. That would be for licensing of occupation. It still shows as pending. Why? I thought we concluded that.
That one is completed, so maybe it just needs to be updated.
Okay, great. On,
I believe it's still pending because we had conversations about adding verbiage or consideration for First Nations issues.
So that piece was updated, but then staff was directed to have, it's probably a 2-part resolution then. One was to update the license of occupation policy, which was done. The second piece of that was to have an Indigenous engagement or relations policy, which I am working on with the Director of Sustainability. But there's a multitude of consultation that takes place, and that's not on our schedule. That's on our neighboring Indigenous communities' schedule.
okay. It doesn't really state that in the tracker, so I'm curious to know, perhaps, according to the notes here, it just says report coming back in March 2024. So perhaps we may want to update that just to make it relevant so there's no concerns with regards to future questions. Over to operations, Mr. Sokash sees 2023-271, which is page 8. I'm just going to come down to page 8. And the last 3 is 271, just so you can reference it. Engineering study Leduc. I do see there's some redundancies here for on page 9, 279 and 271 seem to be of the same matter. I'm curious to know why we have the two, and perhaps you can also provide an update on where we are with that.
Why we have the redundancies, I don't know. I think there were 2 separate resolutions, and one must not have been marked as closed. We have a preliminary design. We're meeting. We had a meeting last week. We're meeting again this week to discuss some of the issues we have. And some costing is being worked out right now as well.
Okay, thank you. Again on page 8, 237, and that's the bike racks. I'm just curious to know if, from what I understand, they've been installed. Should this not be updated as well?
It shows as received right now.
I don't believe they were installed on the day that I did this update. That's the only reason.
Fair enough. They are installed now, are they not? Were they installed last month? I think they were, because I believe Councillor Bocek and I received an email to that.
My recollection, and it's not great, is they were still in our yard when I did this, but it's possible that I missed that they were installed.
Thank you for that. Page 10 to our sustainability director. It's going to be C 2023-412. Again, 412, which is closer to the bottom. It's the rideshare pilot. I'm curious to know, has a letter gone out to the Ministry of Transportation pertaining to our interest in participating in the pilot project? That was part one, I believe, of the two-part motion. And two, have we ever had any formal update on this? Because again, I think for the last 3 months consistently, we've shown the same status.
Commissioner? Perhaps we can get an update from her a little later.
Fair enough. I'm just going to summarize, if I may. I'm a little concerned that the tracker that we're seeing posted online is not as updated as it can be, and I hope that we collectively can do a little bit better in future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other items? I'd like to look, ask a couple questions with regards to item E, which is the MacTier Arena Advisory Committee. Okay, Commissioner, I see
Yes,
that.
sir.
Did you hear Councillor Graziano's question?
I did not. Could you repeat it again?
Councillor Graziano, please.
Bear with me for one moment. So we're discussing item G under the consent agenda, specifically the resolution tracker, page 10, resolution C 2023-412. My question was whether the letter has gone out to the MTO advising that we wish to participate in the rideshare programs and allowing e-bikes or e-scooters on our roadways. And secondly, I've seen consistently month over month the same status. Has there been any status updates?
No, that we didn't send a letter out to the MTO. We went the route suggested to put out RFPs. And so we did a full RFP process and invited anybody that wanted to do e-bikes in the 3 urban centers to come in and bid on the opportunity, and we had no responses. So then we reached out to an individual company, and they have stepped back from any interest in Honey Harbor.
Okay, because the status I have on the tracker shows first invoices being paid, and all documentations have been provided by staff for the efficiency engineering data collection, which I don't think is relevant to this particular resolution, unless perhaps I'm reading incorrectly here. And I believe the resolution did advise that we had to notify the MTO in order to allow these types of bikes or scooters onto our roadways as an initial step. Is that not correct? Because that was, based on my research, the first step required in order to get these things on our roadways.
I wonder if I could pause on that and do a little research to respond, because I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, thank you.
But I will look into it to find out.
All right, thank you. I wanted to ask a couple of questions with regards to the MacTier Arena Advisory Committee. There's a motion, motion 18, which refers to, excuse me, having community meetings scheduled to engage the community in understanding the priorities, and that a report be presented to council with the next steps, community meeting, master plan, and present to community. I'm trying to get a better understanding of what is the, I'm going to call it the scope of this motion, and what costs may be involved. And perhaps as chair, Councilor Graziano, you might be able to respond to that.
I'd be happy to. So during our meeting, we had discussed the possibility of a workout facility park in Mrs. C's Park, along with the pickleball courts in and around the same area, and potentially a skateboard park. We agreed collectively that at this time, rather than making a decision at the committee on whether a workout facility would benefit the community, that a community meeting would be held to determine where the community wishes to, if they were going to identify activity infrastructure, what they feel they would use most. And so rather than having the committee make a decision for them, that we would engage the community, followed by the development of a master plan. So long-term, I believe 5 to 10 year master plan as to what the municipality can do and how it's going to develop these assets. And then finally, that master plan would be presented back to the community to show kind of a long-term understanding. And I think we also discussed the possibility of looking for some sort of funding with the District of Muskoka as well, as I know that our chair has committed to economic development within the community as well. So it was more so an engagement of the community to see what they prefer from a activity perspective, and go from there.
Yeah, my response, I find this a very interesting project, and the community might be quite interested in taking this on, but isn't this well beyond the scope of the Arena Advisory Committee? And so that's my concern. I mean, I think it's something that, I know that MacTier has some experience in doing things like this, and that I can see it making a lot of sense. Don't get me wrong. It seemed interesting to me that and I think it's worth that we as council should note this, that the Arena Advisory Committee has put forth a motion for us to consider that is significantly beyond the scope of that committee. And so that we have to understand that this isn't just looking at something within the arena. And I just wanted to make sure council was aware of that before voting on going down this direction. And also, I think it's also important to understand who might be involved in all this, and who's going to coordinate the community meetings, because that's the first part of this is to coordinate some community meetings, if I understand it correctly.
And if I may, for additional context, this came by way of a staff report to the committee. It wasn't a committee request. Rather, there was some discussions around the activity park. I believe that Councillor Predko had moved a motion in council, I want to say over a year ago, and somehow, some way, this was added to the MacTier Arena Committee, and as a result, the report came to the committee. We reviewed it and we discussed it. And so, if there's a better committee for this, by all means, I'm sure the MacTier community can speak through that committee. If Ms. Schneier feels that it should leave the Arena Committee. Alternatively, we've already discussed it, and at least our committee is advised on an action plan that we felt would fit the community, and here we are.
Sorry. I mean, I just raise it because I want, council to be aware of that. I mean, and the second one that I would just want to make a quick reference to was where council, the motion is that council include in the 2025 budget amounts to hire the roller skating company to offer summer programs in the arena. I'm hoping that will be quantified before we're giving it any approval, because this looks almost like a blanket approval regardless of amounts. But as long as it's part of the budget, then I don't have concern with it. But I just again wanted to point that out. That anyway, I just want to make those observations.
If I may, Your Worship, we don't write the resolutions. Our clerks do, and as a result, I think we've captured the intent, which is that our staff will endeavor to consult with SUSO and find out what those costs are going to be for the 2025 year.
All right. Any other items with regards to the consent agenda? So I, sorry? Moved by Councillor Bocek and seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that council adopts the consent agenda of November 4th, 2024 as circulated. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. All right, and I see Mr. Bain has arrived. So let's, at this point, go back to item, whatever the number it was, item 5, deputations. And Mr. Bain, if you're ready, we're ready to hear from you, please. If you don't mind putting on your micro, and please feel free to sit down. All of us will be more comfortable that way.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of council and members of staff. I'm Tom Bain. I'm here to talk about water sampling and testing in Honey Harbor this past summer. Before I get going, my written submission included 4 areas, but I have added a 5th, and I was just wondering if there was any contention over my talking about the Brandy's Cove matter.
I'm concerned about that simply because the report wasn't provided to council in advance. So I think it might be appropriate to stick to the first 4 and not get into any particular specifics on some additional information that we had not had a chance to review in advance. But let's do the first 4 first. Some questions may come out later.
Well, if we could go to the next slide. My focus in all of the sampling and testing has been on the Ontario Acts and regulations and guidelines. These documents are really quite well written. Some of them have been updated in the last few years. Many years ago, when I had a discussion with Tony White, who was the Commissioner of Public Works for the District of Muskoka, he said, Tom, you know, whatever you do, you need to do everything in accordance and responding to the Ontario regulations, because if you don't, nobody's really going to listen to you. So everything that we have been doing for the last few years, and in particular this year, has been focused on the regulations. If I could have the next slide. The first major regulation is the Ontario Safe Drinking Water Act. And it was brought out in 2002, and it's regulation 31908. The bacteria that is the target bacteria for this regulation are total coliforms and E. coli. Next slide, please. The limits for drinking water are quite familiar to, I think, all of you, and it's total coliforms is 0 CFU, and E. coli is also 0 CFU in drinking water. So I think we're all familiar with that from measuring the water at our homes and cottages. So the next slide is from the Ontario Ministry of Health, and there's 2 documents here. One prepared in 2018 is the Ontario Operational Approaches for Recreational Water Guideline. And the second one was prepared in 2019 is the Ontario Recreational Water Protocol. And both of these documents focus on E. coli. Going to the next slide, the limits for recreational water for E. coli is the geometric mean of 5 samples, okay, must be less than 200 coliform units per 100 milliliters. The geometric mean is an arithmetic term. It's the nth root of the nth product. That is, it's the product of 5 samples, finding the root of that. So it's a bit of arithmetic you need to do on a scientific calculator. However, no sample of the 5 samples must exceed 400 CFU per 100 milliliters. So that's what the recreational standard for safe recreational water use is. Could I go to the next slide, please? In Ontario, the Ontario Water Testing Services are regulated under Regulation 24803. This is for licensed testing laboratories. And the testing laboratory that I have been using, and certainly the District Muskoka uses that I've been using for the last few years, is SGS Environmental Services in Lakeview, Ontario. Next slide. This is the same testing organization as the District of Muskoka uses, and it's recommended by the Center for Advancement of Water and Wastewater Technologies at Fleming College in Lindsay. So if we could go to the next slide. The 4 of the 5 sampling areas that we did testing in this year include the schoolhouse at Pleasant Point, Church Bay, the North Bay Channel, and the South Harbor Marina, and also Brandy's Cove, and we deal with that later. Next slide, please. The first testing area was the schoolhouse at Pleasant Point. The schoolhouse at Pleasant Point is the community center for seasonal residents in Honey Harbor. It includes the Honey Harbor Association, the Honey Harbor Community Church, the Honey Harbor Tennis Club, and the day camp. And so drinking water is important at the schoolhouse at Pleasant Point. We have a regulated system. It's called a non-municipal, non-residential, seasonal small waterworks, and it's a regulated facility. We tested the drinking water 11 times at the schoolhouse this year, or 12 times, and 11 of those came out in compliance with the regulations. That's 0 total coliforms and 0 E. coli. So that was excellent. The one time that it didn't work out very well was when the sample was overcome with heterotrophic bacteria. And heterotrophic bacteria, I'll deal with that a little bit later, but it's a non-regulated parameter. As far as the recreational water is concerned, once again, we had 5 test days, 5 samples per test day. On 3 of the 5 test days, the water did not meet the Ontario regulations for safe drinking water. And although the geometric mean is in accordance with the regulations, we had readings of E. coli in the tens of millions at least one site on each of the 5 tests, on each of the 3 test days that didn't comply. So once again, the reason for that I'll try to deal with a little bit later, but there is a problem there. Particularly, I'm not sure if you can see the sites, but the sites on my document, sites 1 and 5, were the sites that were in difficulty on a basis of 3 of the test days. And they were areas where there was very little water exchange and the E. coli was allowed to accumulate. Next slide. Going to Church Bay. Church Bay is a very active area. It has Picnic Island Trailer Park. It has a marina, Maple Leaf Marina. It used to be Paragon Marina. It has a resort, Bayview Resort. It has the town docks for the Township of Georgian Bay, and it has the docks for Parks Canada. Once again, we tested the recreational water there on 11 times, and 10 out of the 11 tests were in compliance with the regulations. As well as that, we tested phosphorus in Church Bay, and the result we got was 8.25 micrograms per liter, which is really excellent. The background level of phosphorus in Georgian Bay is 11 micrograms per liter. So things have changed a lot in Church Bay. The last time we did extensive measurements in Church Bay was 2012, and I reported on that to the township, and we got rather poor results. But it seems that all of the users in Church Bay seem to be complying with what they should be doing, and the results for both recreational water and for phosphorus are really very good. Moving to the next slide. The North Channel was one that, in particular, Councillor Hazelton was very interested in. It involves the Hidden Glen Trailer Park. It involves a marina, and it discharges into North Bay. Once again, as far as recreational water was concerned, we did 9 tests, and 9 out of the 9 tests were favorable. We were within the regulations for recreational use. We also tested for phosphorus. This area is predominantly fed by wetlands, and wetlands typically have high levels of phosphorus. Phosphorus is sequestered in the root balls of many of the plants in wetlands, so that there is a high source of phosphorus potentially coming out of wetlands from time to time. And the result we got for phosphorus in the North Bay Channel, including the wetlands, was an average of 17.2 micrograms per liter, which I would classify for a wetland is very, very good. Next slide, please. We also tested down at South Harbor Marina, and once again, we got excellent results for recreational water, and also we tested for phosphorus, and our phosphorus levels, once again, were below the average, historical average in Georgian Bay of 11. They were down at 9.5 micrograms per liter. So once again, the phosphorus levels were excellent. I don't know whether you want to go to the next slide or not. That's Brandy's Cove Yachting Center. Is it included?
Go ahead.
Okay. We did Brandy's Cove Yachting Center sort of late in the process. We didn't get to it until September, and we did. The test day was actually September the 12th. We did 5 tests there, and the recreational water on the geo mean of the 5 tests clearly met the recreational water quality requirements of the regulations. However, we also measured the phosphorus, and the phosphorus around Brandy's Cove ranged from a low of 52 micrograms per liter up to a high of 69, with a geo mean of, an average, arithmetic average of 57 micrograms per liter, which is very concerning, given that the background levels of phosphorus in Georgian Bay are 11. Could I go to the next slide? We had also measured the phosphorus at Brandy's Cove prior to the new water or new wastewater works being installed in 2022, and the level of phosphorus there was 11 micrograms per liter. We measured it again in 2023, and it was just less than 30 micrograms per liter. And in September of this year, it was up to 57, which is, we're now pushing up to between 5 and 6 times the background level of phosphorus in that area. I have an appendix with respect to that, and which I haven't submitted, but maybe I could just leave it at that. If we could go to the next slide, it's climate change. Climate change is affecting things in a big way as far as water quality is concerned. After excessive rainfall, we have high levels of E. coli coming into the water, being washed out of particularly septic beds. Typically, the levels of E. coli in septic beds is in the tens of thousands of units per CFUs per 100 milliliters. What we're finding at certain areas of the water are tens of millions. We know that the E. coli is being washed out of the septic beds because also the heterotrophic bacteria is being washed out as well, because we're getting very high counts of heterotrophic bacteria. Heterotrophic bacteria is a natural occurring bacteria in the native earth. One of its main functions is to convert organic material into inorganic material so that it will feed plants. And so we know that on heavy rainfall that we're getting as a consequence of climate change, that not only heterotrophic bacteria is being washed into the water in the tens of millions, but also E. coli. I'll come back to that in a moment. Also, temperature is having a significant effect. We've all experienced higher temperatures in recent years. E. coli replicate logarithmically, okay? Not only at higher temperatures, they replicate logarithmically, but more rapidly. So we get these big pushes of E. coli at the higher temperatures. Sunshine is another matter. We did fairly well with sunshine this year, but last year we had a lot of gray days and smoke-filled days, and this eliminated a lot of the UV irradiation, which naturally kills off E. coli. So we did better this year than we did last year. I don't know if maybe some of you read my article in the bulletin on last year's results, but in many cases, drinking water systems were overcome by high levels of target bacteria. But our hypothesis is that on these heavy rainfall days at the higher temperatures, E. coli is being washed out of the septic beds and the native earth, and is getting into the water. And as a consequence of wind, it is being blown into areas where there's very poor water exchange. And as a consequence, we get these extremely high levels of E. coli in the tens of millions. They only last for a fairly short period of time, probably 3-4 days, but they are in the water. So finally, if we could go to the next slide, we cannot continue to deposit pathogens and nutrients in the natural earth and expect good things to happen. This is no longer a valid proposition. the treatment of wastewater must be completed before the wastewater is put in the ground. Otherwise, we're going to have increasing problems. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you very much. Council, any questions? I think they've been stunned by all the information that you have shared with us. Really appreciate it. I have a question. I absolutely appreciate one of your conclusions that we have to do, in my words, do a better job treating our wastewater before it gets into the lake. But to what degree do you think that some of these spikes are also, I'll call it, naturally occurring, in which the quality or the man-made aspect versus natural aspect of the shoreline plays a factor?
Well, the levels of E. coli that are in the natural earth are relatively low. So in view of the fact that these high levels are occurring, particularly after rainfall, leads me to believe that, and in view of the fact that we're getting heterotrophic bacteria out of the earth as well, that anything that's in either the natural earth or in septic beds is coming out with the high rainfall. It is interesting, though, that we're not getting high levels of phosphorus coming out after these heavy rainfalls. It appears that the bonds between the phosphorus and nitrogen compounds and the aluminum and iron in the natural earth are strong enough to prevent the phosphorus from coming out at the rainfall. So we're primarily getting the heterotrophic bacteria and E. coli.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, for your report. Maybe you could kind of go back to Church Bay, because what you have reported in the quality of Church Bay is clearly a huge diversion. I remember back in 2012 when you and Carl Schaefer did some work and reported the very significant concerns back then. It almost looks like it's cleaned up. Do you have any kind of thoughts on why that might have taken place?
Well, I think everybody is more cognizant of the rules. Okay, I think probably one of the factors of the marina operators have said that marinas should not dump gray water in marinas, and I think that has definitely helped. I think that my conclusion is back in 2012 we were probably getting a lot of gray water being dumped at Paragon Marina, and that's what we were measuring. As well as that, the practices at the Picnic Island Trailer Park, as I understand, have improved dramatically. So I think that, you know, there has been a lot of public awareness and people and organizations doing the right thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper. Councillor Jarvis, apparently you were in front of Councillor Cooper.
I'm not in front of him. I'm actually sort of beside him, but that's okay. A couple of questions. One, this new term, heterotrophic bacteria, was new to me. I do know that my water intake screen was clogged with a ton of crap this past summer, and I'm out beyond Honey Harbor. What form does heterotrophic bacteria take if we were to see it somewhere in the lake system? Is it something we would see?
No.
Okay.
It's very different bacteria than, for instance, E. coli, and it has a very different function. But there are limits to it. These are not regulated limits for drinking water. And for instance, in 2023, We saw on many occasions on the drinking water at the schoolhouse at Pleasant Point and in private residences that the level of heterotrophic bacteria in the treated water was way too high.
You're saying it's high enough that it was interfering with the actual results that you were getting, making the results basically redundant. Is that correct?
No, on the one hand, while the regulated results were okay, the unregulated results were not okay.
Thank you. One other question then. And in light of comments made by Councillor Hazelton, our water levels are down. We're approaching currently levels that we may have seen back in 2012. And back in 2012, Church Bay, for instance, had significant had levels of E. coli that were an issue, and that seems to not be an issue now. And I'm wondering if water levels being higher now are partially responsible for the lower levels of E. coli. In other words, we're getting a better flushing of the system. And whether maybe with low waters returning, we don't know that for sure. We should be significantly concerned with what might happen in areas like Church Bay with the less likelihood of a good flush throughout the season.
Yes, that's a very good observation. I certainly it's a well-known fact that higher water levels produce better recreational water.
Thank you. Okay, that's great.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, the taller one therefore usually behind Councillor Jarvis.
Sorry about that. I'm not going to comment about behind or in front, but anyway, I would just like to query the concept of testing, and particularly I'm interested in when there's heavy rainfall. And with this current set of results, did you do any testing following rainfall, or is this a dry period where you did the testing? Can you explain that for me, please? Thank you. I have a second question.
Certainly, with the results at the schoolhouse at Pleasant Point, the 3 days where the recreational water did not comply with the regulations were within a couple of days of a heavy rainfall. On the occasions where it did comply, and we were very fortunate that they were in the midsummer between July the 15th and August the 15th, there was very little rainfall, and we got much better results.
So the conclusion one can draw is something's coming off the land, and so some might argue, well, it's just natural because it's coming from Canada geese, but one wonders if the septic systems...
These numbers are way too high. If it were just coming out of a septic system, we would be looking at levels in the tens of thousands, okay? But the cumulative effect of this by the wind of blowing this into areas with poor water exchange, we ramp this up to tens of millions of E. coli in these areas. And the schoolhouse at Pleasant Point is on the windward side of the northwest prevailing wind, and these areas at the schoolhouse that had these very high levels had very poor water exchange.
Follow up on a couple of other quick things. So I recall a number of years ago that there was some testing done in Church Bay, and I'm delighted to hear that there's some change, particularly to the system that's in place at Picnic Island, because I seem to recall there were some pretty high results in Church Bay a few years ago. So that, I guess, it is certainly good news. But I also wanted to ask you about the sort of upper end of North Bay, because I recall you wrote an article for Georgian Bay Today about a location up in that area where there was some very high results and concerning results in that area. And What's your comment about that? I believe at that time it could have been partially maybe because of rainfall, but it looks like up in that area now there's not the same concern. So comment?
Yes, the article you're referring to me was a matter that happened in June of 2017. Okay, at a private residence. And the owner of the residence brought to my attention that they were seeing in front of their dock these big balls of green things. And they were basically algal blooms that were occurring. And what we found was that this particular location, they had a what they call a Whitby sand filter bed, which was a sand filter bed, which was approximately 2 meters in depth because it was actually small, and it was sitting on top of bedrock. And at that point in time in June of 2017, this was after very heavy rainfall, and it had washed a lot of the pathogens and in particular nutrients into the water from this filter bed. And we went and measured the levels, and I think we were getting something in the order of 10,000 E. coli in the water in front of this residence. But after several weeks, the matter cleared up and it went away. But once again, it was a function, we believe, of heavy rainfall.
On that, thank you for that, and it's interesting information. I do recall that a former counselor of ours was referring to those balls as elephant snot, and I take it elephant snot in your description is concerning.
Well, I didn't want to refer to it as that in this forum, but now that you have, that's.
Well, it's a term that was used, but it was also said that it wasn't concerning at all, and you've described it as quite concerning. So thank you.
Well, certainly it's an indicator that there may be a problem in the water.
And one of the conclusions from that is that if you're trying to organize where your rainfall flows, don't flow it over your septic bed. Councillor Predko, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Mr. Bain, just a quick question about the schoolhouse testing. I think in the drinking water in the presentation slide, you had mentioned that there were 11 out of 12 tests that passed and the one didn't pass, but you had labeled the drinking water as safe. Is there any concern with the one test that didn't pass, or indication that that's significant of something else?
The one that didn't pass was in the distribution system. It wasn't after the treated water, and we believe that it was. Although we flush the system with chlorine prior to the beginning of the season, and in fact this year we had the system, particularly the UV unit, checked by a professional technician, and but after that particular occurrence, once again we flushed the system with chlorine, and we thought it was probably something that was residing in the distribution pipes.
Okay, well, good reason to test.
Yeah.
And follow-up question to our CBO. Just wanted to know if this, the testing around the marinas is something that is affected, impacted, or do you do septic testing around this areas and water testing independently of this? And is it at all related to your programs?
Through your worship, the water quality testing is done through this program, so we don't go, they are part of it. So they're part of it doing the Georgian Bay. As for the specific places in general, a lot of times they're regulated by MECP, not us. We don't have jurisdiction to go in there.
Okay.
In the larger areas and service to inspect them.
Yep. Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bocek.
Hope I've done it right this time. Thanks for the presentation, Tom. Sorry I had to step out for a minute. You and I have talked a few times about water quality. I'm just wondering if you could make reference in your testing to let's say the 300,000 liters of raw sewage that was dumped in by the Midland plant, and then there was also a big spillage by the Penetang plant because their sewer water during big storms, obviously dumps the raw sewage into the bay. How much of your testing is affected by the discharge of sewage from the two main towns directly to our west?
Well, I guess the main reference that we have are the historical results that the Severn Sound Environmental Association has been doing in Honey Harbor for many, many years. And certainly their results do not appear to have been affected in any way by these dumps. And we've heard about these, as you've mentioned, have occurred on a number of occasions over the years. So I guess my biggest reference would be the Severn Sound Environmental Association results, and that's been going on for probably 20 years. Certainly their results are not reflective of any dumpage, as well as that the prevailing wind is from the northwest, which would not bring that wastewater into Honey Harbor.
Thanks, Mr. Bain. Appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for council, and thank you for staff for listening to me. I really do appreciate it, and I hope that we can do more water testing in the Township of Georgian Bay and preserve our water. Thank you.
Agreed, and we appreciate you sharing your information with us. Thank you. No open forum, I presume. So now we go to communications from mayor and council. And last month, I started with Councillor Bocek. So this month, I'm going to start with Councillor Graziano, just because Hazelton suggested, I'm going to start with Councillor Graziano and go out and then out this side. Got to stir it up a little bit.
Thank you. Thankfully, I'm prepared for it. So this month, I had a few meetings, commencing with the MacTier community discussion pertaining to the ambulance station. Regrettably, I had to miss the 17th. That I had a personal matter I had to attend to. I also attended the MacTier Halloween dance, which was excellent. I did not dress up this year, although I think next year I will. I attended the MLCA AGM along with Councillor Bocek and our mayor. I sat in on the inaugural OBD rock crushing working group, as well as I met with the MVLCC 64 and staff. And lastly, I attended the GPCA fall dinner at Raleigh, which was an excellent dinner with some great familiar faces. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you. So I just wanted to start off with, I attended the Zoom meeting on MAT tax, and I think it's important to offer kudos where kudos need to be handed out, and I think Jennifer Schneer did an awesome job on handling the questions that were presented during that forum, and I thought the answers she provided were great, so I want to thank her very much for that. This month has been consumed with many conversations about waste. There is general panic in the community as to what's going to happen. There is misinformation, disinformation, etc. And I think that we want to be aware of that. I think we probably are, but I think we want to be aware of it. One thing that I did want to report on is, and I think I mentioned in a previous meeting that I had reached out to Circular Materials to try to understand what the program was going to be going forward. And they have reported back to me that even though roadside pickups are going to be done under their jurisdiction, the recycling of materials at bin sites, marinas, et cetera, is going to continue to be handled by the district, although the materials are going to circular materials and not back to the district. So I think that's a useful data point for us to understand. I wanted to thank our Director of Planning, Derek, for the opportunity to meet with him and discuss the topic of marinas and possible changes of use. That is a topic that, again, has a very significant number of constituents very concerned with some of the things that are going on in Honey Harbor, and there is panic going on, and so I had an opportunity to discuss that with our Director of Planning. I'm not sure we got to any clear-cut outcomes, but it was certainly a useful first step, so thank you very much for that. I guess we can all do our own math and count things up, but just as another data point, 900 plus pages for today and tomorrow. That's a new record. And now we get it in hard copy. Thank you.
Councilor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. Busy month for sure. I think rather than running through the usual set of meetings that I attend, I will say that I've spent a lot of time discussing solid waste with a variety of our constituents. It is a very concerning matter that we need to get to the bottom of. We're still not there. We're hopefully getting more information, especially pertaining to the marina issue and waste collection at marinas and the privatization of that. One of the conclusions that working with a lot of the math I've come to is that looks like privatization could be attractive from a costing perspective for our constituents. So it's interesting to make note of that. And frankly, it'd be beneficial to the township if we don't dump too much solid waste responsibility on them. So I'm hopeful that we can get to some privatization and see some opportunities there. I would also like to sort of say that I spent a fair bit of time discussing the issue of marinas use being changed. I haven't talked to our director about this, but I am hearing a fair bit about it, and I think there is some language in our bylaws, I believe, or our official plan that pertains to the requirement for the recreation, I believe it is, of new lots, that there needs to be a marina slip for that new lot. And so if we have that language, here's the other side of it, which is what's to stop the marina from converting their slips into floating boat houses or cottages or you name it. So I think that's where we're lacking some control. And so it's fine to say you can create a new lot or build a new cottage on a new lot if you have a slip, but the slip disappeared because it's got a different use now. So that's very problematic, and we need to address that as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Jarvis, please.
Over and above the usual Committee of Adjustment and Library Board, and I'll come back to library in just a moment, but the other item for me was the Oktoberfest kickoff event on the 21st of October, which took place at Christie's Mill. This was a bit of a push from Seg Bay and by Christie's Mill to have the Oktoberfest kickoff in this area as part of the District of Muskoka Oktoberfest itself. I missed unfortunately, the breaking open of the keg by about 15 minutes, but I was there otherwise. It was a pleasant event, though not well attended. And when you think about it, Monday, the 21st of October, probably not a big date for that type of event, but I gather when it's taken place in Huntsville or Bracebridge, it's been much better attended. Just an interesting observation. Seg Bay is an interesting opportunity for me to listen to what businesses have as part of their concerns. I have had a number of people mention the MAT tax public forum that went on, and in light of comments made post open house there, I hope to have some more concrete information, but my impression from SegBay members was that the MAT tax meeting was not exactly what they had hoped. So I haven't got details on that. I'm hoping to talk to a few more people and get that information so that can be relayed to our Director of Sustainability. If we move on to library, a couple things going on there. The off-season hours have begun with the fall and winter programming now in place. The library will be out and about for the Santa Claus parades in MacTier, Honey Harbor, Port Severn. And of course, there'll be the MacTier branch will be open for the holiday train coming to MacTier. They are, the library is currently preparing a township-wide survey to gather learning from residents in order to develop programs and services that are more tailored to their needs for next year, for 2025. We're seeing significant, I think, very much a proactive approach, which is what you'd expect from an organization like a public library. And it's great to see, and I know that the public, for the most part, are very, very enthusiastic with the activities going on at all branches. One final note and just an observation that'll be, I know this is for our Director of Sustainability again, we're looking at funding, some more funding coming to the Baxter Ward Community Center. And while looking at that funding specifically may not be pertinent to the expansion of our Port Severn branch into the Baxter Ward Community Center, I think we should be considering that aspect of it, because if we move the library branch from our current Port Severn location over to Baxter Ward, I think a number of people will benefit, including our municipal staffing situation. So something that needs to be considered on that end of things. Other than that, I applaud the planning department for, on occasion, referring constituents to their respective councillors for input and feedback. And I'm getting that. And I've had some great conversations with constituents as a result. So I really appreciate that approach to applications coming in, and when constituents have questions or want more information, talking to us doesn't give them the answers they want necessarily, but certainly we get to talk to them about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Lots of activity in MacTier last month, particularly to do with the concerns in the community about the ambulance station being slated to close and a new dispatch and service model being introduced. So attended a number of resident-based meetings, as well as an open house that was hosted by the district to try to educate the residents, as well as listen to the concerns that the residents have with the proposed changes. So I don't think this issue is over, but so we'll be seeing what happens with that in the next month or two. But a lot of discussion happening there. Based on our solid waste meeting last month, with the news that the district has approved that scenario 3 with lakeside collection for water access residents, there was quite a reaction on in the Go Home Lake area that was not seeing the benefits of lakeside collection in terms of how that would logistically work, and given that there are currently 2 bin sites and people will be driving garbage between marinas to get to what was supposed to be lakeside. So I've been fielding a lot of calls and emails about that, as well as trying to educate people on what the process is and who's responsible for what. Attended the Sustainable Community committee as well as the MacTier Arena Committee. I listened to the Matt Tax Town Hall, and I thought there was a lot of good discussion and a lot of opportunities for further refinement on the proposal, as well as opportunities for the township to partner with other agencies to help if we implement the MAT tax with what to do with the funds. And then really, I think the end of the month, we're looking at another busy end to November for the MacTier area. They've got a busy last weekend of November, with the CPKC holiday train coming in the afternoon, the Lions having their game dinner in the evening, and the next day the Santa Claus parade at the arena. This year they will be hosting a skate for all of those who attend the parade after the parade in the arena. So it should be a great change, and I expect that will be a very well attended weekend up in MacTier. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Bochek.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I kind of have a laundry list of things because it was kind of a busy month, so I'm just going to run through it. Some of it will be a repeat of what was said. October the 4th, we had a virtual meeting with the developers of the Sunny Lee project. The mayor, Councillor Graziano, and I attended. It was basically to seek more information about their approach coming to the council meeting last month. On the 7th of October, attended the council meeting, both open and closed. The 8th was the Planning Council and Committee of the Whole. I was unable to attend the 11th at District. I think it was the 11th anyways. I had a funeral to attend, so Councillor Graziano stepped in my place, and I thank him for that. Attended the MacTier, I don't even know what to call it. It was kind of a shouting match, but the public meeting where the district staff from the ambulance, fire, and Jeff Lehman, the chair, came down to explain what the new program was going to roll out. I don't think it was accepted all that great. We were asked to make statements. I simply said that I support the people of MacTier and I'm their voice at district. I can't really say much else to do with that. On the 18th, we had a special council meeting, solid waste. The 21st, I think it was the 21st that Councilor Graziano attended for me. Then we had a virtual meeting with Oak Bay, or a member of Oak Bay, Lori Russell, about some issues that are over at Oak Bay. Don't pertain solely to the Township of Georgian Bay, but it was a good listen. The big one was at the district health services meeting that we had at the district, and what was talked about was, or what I brought up was, in the case that the MacTier ambulance building did close, it leaves the PRW left outside, which is the first response unit. In other words, you have to shovel it out and start it up and warm it up. So through the help of the mayor, there was a fund sitting up at the district that they wanted to use, and we kind of talked them in, I think, to putting a portion of that aside in case we need a second go around with this station. Perhaps we could repurpose it using those funds. I'd actually like the mayor to maybe speak to that a little bit more because he understands more about finance than I do. Attended the 6 Mile Lake AGM virtually, great meeting. Attended the SCAG meeting, and when it came to solid waste, my constituents are very upset. Of course, everybody knows the last time there was a controversy, everybody threw their garbage bags on my front lawn because I'm a local councillor that lives here. I fully expect to have clear bags thrown on my front lawn the next go around, but it's a very big concern up on Go Home. It's a very big concern on 6 Mile, Gibson. Port Severn's a little bit different because Port Severn consists of Tay, Severn, and Georgian Bay Township, and they all use our solid waste facilities because if not, they have to go all the way to Midland, something that needs to be addressed. I think that's it for me for the month. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, like all of you, a full month, and My month started with spending a couple of days in Bracebridge going for incident management training, the IMS 200 course, and that was interesting to be surrounded by a lot of professionals and the paramedics, firefighters, and whatnot, learning how to better handle incidents. And the one thing I'll say coming out of that is that what the province has created is an amazing collection of checklists. And if you have access to those checklists, you have somebody holding your hand no matter what comes up. And I'm grateful for that. I'm also grateful for those professionals who are trained to take care of all this stuff, because it's amazing what has to be managed. The mention has been made a couple times about the MacTier paramedic situation in the public meeting and everything else, and I can say a couple things. One is, and further to what you were saying, Councillor Bochek, there's no question that we've got district thinking about what else can be done with the paramedic building other than simply closing it. And you know, can other services use that as a base, for instance, and things like that. So the good news is conversation is going to be taking place over the coming months, and so I think that what the MacTier residents have succeeded in doing is having district staff and many other people considering what other options might be out there. And so if the door is open for discussion, to me, that's a definite positive from all that has taken place. Attended a ministers meeting that was held at the Baxter Ward Community Center back on the 18th of October. Ministers Thompson, Smith, and Dunlop were there to basically listen to a crowd of, I don't know, was there 40 people in the room? I can't remember, 50, express opinions about economic development. It was interesting to hear a lot of the comments and everything else there. Also had the pleasure of attending the 6 Mile Cottage Association, their AGM, and listening to their input. So I really appreciate the invitation there. On Halloween, I was over in Bracebridge attending the first meeting of the OPP Detachment Board, the Bracebridge OPP Detachment Board. And so it was a lot of sort of introduction and everything else. And time will tell what will become from this new structure that the province has been trying to create for the last, let's say, half dozen years. I think they've been working on it. I remember the first meeting I attended trying to educate us on this was back in 2020. And there's still a lot of holes to fill, because this is a brand new idea, a new structure, and it's different than the service boards, and you know, insurance companies don't know how to insure the board, and you know, things like that. Things have to still be refined, and and apparently there's going to be a number of provincial appointees to the board, and they haven't been appointed, so it makes it much harder to achieve a quorum for your meetings, but there you go. But I'd say overall, most of my conversations outside the normal has been either on solid waste or on paramedics, and those conversations are going to continue. And I'm in both cases optimistic. As strange as some people may find that, I think these conversations are going in the right direction, and I'm optimistic that we'll eventually get there. If I haven't learned anything else in the past half dozen years in this job, you need some patience. And sometimes with the different levels of government, things work a little more slowly than you wish, but doesn't stop us from persisting. C.O. Mariotti, any comments you'd like to make before we take a break and get into a rather thick document?
Thank you, Mayor MacTier. Good morning, Council. I'll try and be brief. I won't talk about the marina bin sites, as Council has already discussed that. The 2025 budget, as Council can see, staff have worked hard to prepare a quality budget book It's in hard copy format to make it a lot easier for council for the coming weeks to digest and to basically talk with the various department heads as to the detail that's contained in the budget book. This is something that all the A-list municipalities do, by the way, so we want to bring the quality of our workmanship up to the top top standards. And I know that Jazz and Candace have worked extremely hard to present this, as well as the other members of the team. So hopefully council will enjoy the book. I know it's a long read, but really in terms of openness and transparency, we can't be more open and transparent than this kind of book when making multi-million-dollar decisions. We had, as staff, an all-staff meeting again this fall, and as council knows, we hold these twice a year, so every 6 months. And I believe Mayor Coetzee would happen to be here at the time, and he also sat in on the meeting. It was very interesting for me. I really noticed how the various department heads were achieving their objectives and going through their work plans together with the other departments. And for me, that shows that there is a partnership and a teamwork that is really building amongst staff in terms of achieving our common goals together and not working in silos. And really, when I went through the numbers, I was quite impressed actually at the work that we have done, even though it doesn't appear to be so for some. But as of October, council passed over 100 resolutions requiring staff attention, and these do not include any planning resolutions. And over the last 6 months, we've knocked off 28 items on the work plan, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you break it down per month, that's over 5 per month or 1 a week. So we are beavering through the list of items that are on our work plan. And not only that, but the overall list that we have is still coming down. So even though there is more work that is being added to the list, we are working a way to bring the total down of our work plan that back in April it was at 158, and now we're down to 140. So yeah, there was comments earlier about the resolution tracker, that there were some errors in there. We have hundreds of entries in the resolution tracker. So if there are 4 or 5 items that may not be correct, I would recommend to council to maybe pick up the phone and reach out to the department head and say, hey, is this how are we doing on this resolution item? And that probably will allow for a more streamlined council meeting in the future. Affordable housing in MacTier. So staff met with district. We have an option that we are going to be proactively looking at in more detail to see if it really is viable from a high density development perspective. So we hope to have some news early in the new year, and we will be inviting other stakeholders at the table at that point. Community paramedicine. So staff again met with some more health teams actually this time from Muskoka area and Cottage Country, and some interesting information that we've gathered. I didn't know this, but apparently one nurse practitioner can handle a caseload of 700 to 800 patients. So I was asked, what's the need? Can you quantify, how many FTEs you might need? And at this point, I don't know. Do we have 10 in need? Do we have 1,000 in need? So I think what's going to happen is we'll probably end up issuing more of a structured survey to the township just to assess how much of a need there really is. We do. The One Health team actually has an office in Wata, which is quite close for the north end of MacTier. So, sorry, the north end of the township. So anyway, discussions ongoing, but very valuable. And again, there are services out there already. So I don't want to belabor this point, but the district does do outreach. They do home visits. If you qualify, the contact details are in the report there. Please reach out to them. Community paramedics will actually also draw blood for folks in need. So there is a system out there that maybe we need to do a better job at communicating. And last but not least, some good news for MacTier, I'd like to think, is that we're going to be opening an OPP office space where the fireball currently is, and I think council will be voting on a motion to formally approve that for the Bracebridge detachment. So we hope to have an increased police presence in MacTier. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Lots of good things happening. Council, I'm going to propose we take a break and come back at 10:45. So it's a 10-minute break. Thank you. All right, let's bring this back together. And if we could go on to our staff reports, and the first item on our staff report is the proposed budget. And for those in our audience who may not see, this is the document that has been prepared. It's very impressive. But with that, I'm going to turn over to our treasurer. And if we could introduce the budget and what you want us to do with this document over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Mayor MacTier and members of council. I'm just going to have the deputy clerk share the PowerPoint presentation for today. Thank you. Mayor MacTier, members of council. The purpose of today's presentation is to officially table the township's 2025 proposed budget and provide members of council, along with the public, some highlights with respect to this plan. All members of council should now be in receipt of their budget books, as they were provided digitally last week and in print this morning. Staff are requesting the 2025 proposed budget be received today and referred to a special meeting of council for further discussion and deliberation. Next slide, please. Today's agenda includes a high-level review of the 2025 consolidated budget, which is comprised of taxation as well as the capital budget. Sorry, back one. Slide 2, sorry. To the agenda. There you go. Apologize about that. Secondly, I will review the council directed and realigned budget items, as well as new initiatives or service enhancements that are being proposed for the 2025 budget and for council consideration. I'll also provide a high-level review of the capital budget as well as its impacts. Lastly, we will review the budget timelines and budget process. From there, I'll be happy to answer any questions as they relate to timelines and our process. Before getting into the details of today's presentation, I wanted to take a moment to thank council for their input, as well as senior management and their respective managers, as well as Greg for their input and efforts into this year's budget. I also wanted to thank our Deputy Treasurer, Candace Wislenko, for all her hard work and time that she put into this budget. Next slide. As noted earlier, the township's consolidated budget is comprised of two key components. The tax-supported operating budget, which includes programs and services that are primarily funded from property taxes, reserves, and user fees. Some examples of the services and programs that fall into this budget are roads maintenance, winter maintenance, fire and emergency services, parks and facilities, and bylaw enforcement. The capital budget and 10-year capital plan includes capital projects or equipment the township acquires, constructs, or renews to ensure the service potential of its infrastructure assets. The 2025 base budget is set to see a tax levy increase in the amount of $262,618. This equates to a 1.88% tax levy increase. This includes base budget increases such as merit progressions, legislated benefit increases, collective agreement impacts, service contract agreements, operating commitments, and economic adjustments related to the ongoing operations of the township. Next slide, please. The impact of the 2025 proposed budget on an average single-family detached residential property assessed at $180,000 is a net increase of $9.22 for the township portion, or $5.12 over 2024 per $100,000 of assessment. This slide assumes the district increase is estimated at 5% and no change to the education portion. Overall, this results in a blended tax increase
of 2.82% or $37.76 for an average single-family detached residential property. Next slide, please. Staff are proposing a base budget increase of 1.88%. This equates to less than $1 per month for the average home assessed at $180,000. This is about 3 cents per day on a $20 million budget, which includes $6.6 million for capital projects in 2025. Next slide, please. In addition to the base levy increase, staff have included council-directed and realigned budget items, resulting in an additional increase of approximately $404,000. The 2025 base budget plus council-directed and realigned items is set to see a tax levy increase in the amount of $663,000, which equates to a 6.76% tax levy increase over 2024. Next slide, please. The impact of the 2025 proposed budget on an average single-family detached residential property assessed at $180,000 would now result in an increase of $33.21 for the township portion, or $18.45 over 2024 per $100,000 of assessment. This is further broken out on page 43 of your budget book. This slide assumes the district increase is estimated at 5% and no changes to the education portion. Overall, this results in a blended tax increase of 4.62% or $61.75 for the average single-family detached residential property. Next slide, please. There are a total of 8 council-directed and realigned budget items that have either been pre-approved by council or requested by council for inclusion in the 2025 proposed budget for further consideration. These items make up an additional 4.88% of the tax levy increase, which, when added to the base levy impact of 1.88%, results in a total proposed increase of 6.76%, as previously noted. Staff undertook a comprehensive review and a compensation review and a pay equity study in 2024, which was presented to council at a special closed meeting held on September 17th, 2024. Direction from council was received and incorporated into the budget, resulting in a net increase of approximately $178,000. Staff continue to work through contract negotiations, and as such, details of this increase should only be discussed in closed session. Staff have incorporated the following items as requested by council resolution. 2 large item pickups for 2025. The Information Technology Strategic Plan update, which is to be funded by reserves as it is a one-time expense. Waste Management Feasibility Study, also funded by reserves as directed by council. Revenue Optimization and Fee Review conducted by Strategy Corp, and also included as an appendix in the back of your budget book. This actually reduces the tax levy as it is revenue that aims to collect fees directly through those that are benefiting, ultimately reducing the tax levy. Venture Muskoka Plan regarding retention and implementation, which will further be discussed by the Director of Sustainability. And the last 2 items include reducing the reliance on reserves, as well as reducing the attrition rate from 10% to 5%. These items are identified as realigned budget items to ensure the township can move forward without relying on reserves to balance the budget and realizing the township is almost operating at a full staffing capacity. Next slide, please. In addition to the base levy increase and council-directed and realigned budget items, staff have included a total of 9 service enhancements, also known as new initiatives, resulting in an additional increase of approximately $398,000. The 2025 total budget is set to see a tax levy increase in the amount of approximately $1 million, which equates to 11.61% tax levy increase over 2024. Next slide, please. The impact of the 2025 proposed budget on an average single-family detached residential property assessed at $180,000 would now result in an increase of $57.05 for the township portion, or $31.70 over 2024 per $100,000 of assessment. This is further broken out on page 44 of the budget book. This slide assumes the district increase to be estimated at 5% and no change in the education portion, overall resulting in a blended tax increase of 6.4% or $85.59 for an average single detached residential property. Next slide, please. In addition to providing core programs and services to Georgian Bay residents, staff are proposing 9 service enhancements, of which 2 pertain to the Library Board and SSEA. A detailed justification for each service enhancement is attached to the budget so that Council is able to review each item on its own merit. Staff will also discuss these service enhancements in further detail when we review the departmental budgets on November 26th. This slide provides a high-level list of all the proposed service enhancements and their proposed impact on the 2025 budget, which is an additional 4.85%. Of the 9 service enhancements requested, 6 pertain to new staffing positions. I do believe there are 2 potential additional service enhancements that were approved by the consent agenda this morning, and they include the roller skating event as well as a recreation and parks master plan for MacTier. I can add those as a new quick update to the budget for the November 19th meeting of Council. And my suggestion would be to have a master plan funded through reserves. The roller skating event would be a tax levy funded if Council were to approve. Thank you. Next slide, please. The 2025 proposed capital budget, which forms the first year of the 10-year capital plan, is comprised of gross expenditures in the amount of $6.6 million, of which $2.2 million is being carried over from 2024 capital projects. The annual capital plan is outlined within your budget book starting on page 147. Each request contains a justification sheet outlining the need for whether it be the equipment or maintenance or fleet or what the purpose would be. Staff have outlined some of the key capital projects and highlighted them on page 58 of your budget book as well. The major capital projects include capital upgrades to the administration building, including the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, Leduc Lane drainage, Stewart Lake Road and Silver Sands Road, capital upgrades to the Baxter Ward Community Center, Honey Harbor Park Landing, Port Severn Park, and the MacTier Union Cemetery. Next slide, please. The 2025 proposed budget is also forecasting funding sources in the amount of $6.6 million. The majority of the funds are proposed to be drawn from reserves, tax supported, which really refers to the capital levy included within the operating budget, and DC reserve funds. The capital levy remains unchanged from 2024 at $2.5 million, resulting in no additional increase to the levy. Although the asset management plan recommended a yearly tax increase of 14.87% to reduce the infrastructure gap, staff are recommending pausing this increase for 2025 due to current pressures and affordability. Staff recommend restarting the increase in 2026 and compounding annually moving forward. Thank you. And next slide. The proposed 10-year capital plan is comprised of gross expenditures in the amount of $45.7 million. The majority, $17 million or 37% of the proposed expenditures are within the municipal buildings facilities area. This is partially due to the township's aging infrastructure. The second highest investment is within the township's roads network at $10.4 million, and then fleet at approximately $8.7 million. Next slide, please. Now this slide provides an overview of the timeline. The next phase of budget deliberation consists of 4 days of staff council budget information sessions from November 12th to 15th. These are intended to be one-on-one sessions with department heads and or finance. These sessions shall be booked through the clerk's department and can be in person, over the telephone, or online through Teams or Zoom. These sessions are intended to go over details or provide a deeper dive to help council members have a better understanding of either the budget or the process itself. I highly encourage members of council to take advantage of this opportunity because it does provide 4 full days of staff sitting with members of council and going over an entirely new budget process. November 19th has been set aside for presentations from agencies, boards, and committees. This includes the library and SSEA. Council will be requested to vote on these requests on November 19th for inclusion within the final budget. November 26th has been set aside for a full day of budget deliberations where staff will walk members of council through departmental operating as well as capital budgets. And we will be following along with the budget book. Council will be requested to review and approve individual department budgets as well as council directed and realigned budget items that require approval as well as individual service enhancements. December 9th has been set aside for a final council budget approval. Today, staff are simply requesting the 2025 proposed budget be received and referred to a special meeting of council for further discussion and deliberation. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. And before I turn this over for council for any, we'll call it overall questions about this, I will say I'm very impressed by the document. I have mixed feelings about all the money spent on printing it, but I won't go down that road. But I'm very impressed by the organization, the structure, the backup, and all that sort of stuff. So I know that most of the questions I may come up with, probably the answer's in here somewhere. But I'm going to ask two questions, and both are around the capital budget. I just want to make sure I understand things clearly. One is every year we've increased the capital levy, and this year you're recommending we don't because all our increases are for the operating budget, wherever we land. And I guess that's just because you don't want to get into the double digits percentage increase. I presume that was the motivation. I see your head nodding. Okay. Second question. You gave us a 10-year capital budget projection of $45 million or thereabouts. Which my quick math says that's $4.5 million a year, and we're only taxing $2.5 million a year. Now, obviously, those numbers don't quite match. But that $45 million, is that presuming no grants or support outside our taxpayers? And the reason I asked that was because we know many a project we apply for additional support that we may or may not receive. So I'm just wondering about that.
Thank you, Mayor MacTier, and through you two, members of council. That does not include any additional grants we would receive from other ministries. It does include the Canada Community Building Fund as well as the Ontario Community Building Funds, because those are more structured and reliable sources of funding. So we have included those, but it does not include your one-offs. Just in my experience, we don't include grants unless we are fully aware that we will be receiving the funding, just so there's no surprises to the tax levy.
No, and I fully appreciate that, but I think it's also, again, it's the optimist in me, because I know in numerous projects we apply for funding, and if the funding comes along, we say, okay, well then we're going to go ahead with that. And other ones we might stall a little bit. Anyway, with that, I'm going to turn it over to council, and Councillor Bocek, you're going to lead off the discussion, please. And just before we do, I don't want to get too much in the nitty gritty, simply because we have days scheduled for the nitty gritty, but overall I prefer, but if you want to make a couple of remarks, that's fine, but let's not get lost in the weeds, if you will.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for this. I'm going to need a lot of time to digest it, speak to some people that know something about financing, but what I wanted to thank you for is for the written copy of this. I've been asked to reduce my screen time after 7 o'clock at night. This is a perfect opportunity for me to sit in front of the fireplace in a rocking chair and read it. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Cooper, please, from your rocking chair.
I don't have a rocking chair. Oh dear. What's going on here? Why have I got an echo? That's off. I need repetition for me to. Okay, so there's another little switch here. Sorry. Yeah, I don't have a rocking chair per se, but I certainly hope that Councillor Bochek doesn't throw it in the fire. However, I do have, and by the way, the document is beautifully done and handsome copy. It'll look perfect in my library up on the shelf, but I'll try and read it too. And thank you for all your hard work. It's certainly appears to be very well done. I do have one question because I think it's important for the public to be able to grasp what all this means. And one of the things that people can relate to is how much are my taxes? And I realize that maybe there's a number that is used across Ontario, $180,000 assessment, which is completely irrelevant to our township. So I was going to suggest that in addition to the example of 180,000, that we use a number that's a little bit more realistic for our township. If we just took 5,500 households and divided it by the total budget, including the district, I would suggest, what is that number per 100,000 and so forth, so that there's a way of relating to it. Because if somebody sees $180,000, they're going to start laughing. Where do I find that? You know, where can I buy 3 of those, please? I just don't think there's much opportunity to find something in that sort of value area, especially when you consider that, you know, probably 80–90% of our households are on waterfront. That makes a very different picture. So I just a suggestion from a relatable perspective. Thank you.
Ms. Redding.
Thank you, Mayor Coutier. Through you to Councillor Cooper. I apologize. Without the rocking chair. We will definitely take that as direction. The $180,000 is, it's MPAC assessment. And it's unfortunate because they base it on your residential full year-round properties. And it's not necessarily based on your waterfront properties, but we do have access to that information. We have provided the $100,000 of assessment within the budget book to show the difference between the 180 and the 100,000. We also have the average waterfront property, what that would be assessed at. So we'll provide a sheet on November 19th, providing the different assessments and what that would mean for a property tax increase.
If I may, all I'm suggesting is I'm sure you've got some of that information in there, but there's sort of a lead descriptor that's happening here with 180,000. So all I'm suggesting is that not even use waterfront, just use number of households divided into our total budget and have that number there so that people can also relate to that. Because I think it's a fair sort of showing of what's really happening, not what MPAC decides they want to tell us to use. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's legitimate, and I think that we have to emphasize that MPAC is so far behind in valuations that it's ridiculous. But if I take $13 million and divide it by 5,500 households, I come up with $2,400. And that's a real rough ball figure. Okay, district portion. Yeah, yeah.
Everybody pays taxes on this,
yes,
and the services provided by the district.
Yep. No, I think that's fair remarks. And I do appreciate you making reference to the education and district, because most of our taxpayers saying, last year I paid $8,000 in taxes, and they didn't do the math to say how it was divided out. They just know they paid $8,000. Thank you. Councillor Graziano, please.
Thank you, Worship, and I have to commend staff for such a brilliant, report, as well as book. And I would hope that maybe perhaps one day we could get something as blingy as nice in our resolution trackers going forward. But with that said, Councillor Cooper stole my thunder, which was surprising. I had assessed our average homes to be about 800,000, and as such, based on a 6.76% increase, That would net out to be $147.60 per household per year. Likely a lot more because that's just simply an average, with many of us going well beyond the 800K. And that is concerning to me. The other comment that I'd like to make, and again, I'm trying to keep this high level, is what I feel has been absent in at least the PowerPoint presentation, and I didn't get a chance to review all 540 pages of our budget, was where you propose on saving costs. And I'd like to see a slide or slides outlining where staff is proposing on how we can save costs. And I have a few great ideas that I will likely present in coming meetings with respect to budget. But I'd like to challenge staff to find ways to cut costs, reduce this tax levy, and present it in a very short form summary, such as what you've done here today. Thank you. Director Radigan.
Thank you, MacTier, through you to Councillor Graziano. So the way this budget is laid out is we do show a base budget increase of 1.88%, and that is the bare bones basic. That is staff going through line by line and ensuring to decrease costs where we can. That's a very minimal increase, which is less than $10 annually for the municipal portion. And then moving forward, we are looking at council directed or realigned items. Those are entirely up to council if we choose to include or exclude them, with the exception of the compensation review, which has already been approved by council. So going to 6.76%, that is entirely up to council if they choose to approve those remaining already council directed or realigned items. We don't necessarily need to include them. That is entirely up to council on where we wish to go with our budget. The service enhancements are, some have come forward through the MacTier Advisory Committee, and some have come forward as a need in terms of this is what we need to improve our operations or become more aligned with our operations to provide the services that our residents have come to expect. So to come back with a smaller budget of 1.88%, I don't believe that there is anything left to give. We have reduced the budget as much as we possibly can, and that's why we've come forward with a minimal increase of 1.88%. In addition to that, just going back to the comment of assessment of 800,000. So MPAC is still assessing homes at the 2016 current value assessment, the CVA assessment. They have put property reevaluations on hold. We will be coming forward to the November 26th with a presentation outlining that as well. So assessed value versus market value are two totally different things. Assessed value is what you were taxed on. Market value is not necessarily up to date. So a new home built to date, MPAC actually has to reevaluate that at 2016 current value assessment levels. It's not actually evaluated in today's dollars. And with the MPAC reassessment still being on hold, we're not quite sure where the government is going with how to value property taxation fairly again. And it's been on hold for, it'll be almost 9 years now. So that in itself is a problem. So I just wanted to outline some of those and clarify the difference between market value versus assessed value. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Radigan, thank you for your comments. Frankly speaking, when we look at the current assessed values based on what is articulated here and the total amount that it would cost our ratepayers, I personally feel that it's my opinion that it's somewhat dubious in the fact that it's not accurate. And so when selling council on what those increases are going to look like, it's not necessarily representative of what those actual increases would look like, even though we're using MPAC's 2016, 2012 assessment values. That's not the reality on the ground. And as such, we need to try to represent what this is actually going to, or how this is going to impact our constituents and what they're paying annually for increases in taxes. Secondly, pardon me for not clarifying. I appreciate you breaking up with the 1.88% base or bare. versus the nice to haves that council would like to see our community endeavor to enjoy going forward for 2025. However, there are places that I think we can cut, and that would be likely from IT, because I think our IT budget's overblown. That's my personal opinion. Perhaps legal, and finding ways that we can shave costs with respect to our operation and budget. And I also see that I think it's proposed 5 net new heads, totaling about 400,000 in the 2025 budget, which will likely impact the bottom line. And we could likely try to find efficiencies by maybe redeploying some of those responsibilities onto staff currently. So with that said, I'd love to see a slide or slides that show where you feel operationally we can cut costs, rather than the nice to haves that you've presented us for our community members to appreciate and enjoy throughout the course of their experience while in our township. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Radigan?
Thank you, Mayor Kutsier. Through you to Councillor Graziano. I did just want to provide further clarification that actual assessment that we've provided and the assessment based on 100,000 is what a homeowner would see as an increase to their levy based on the percentages we have provided. That is the actual increase.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis, please.
Not to belabor a point, but impact assessment values having not been changed since 2016 is an issue. I have in new business, there is a motion I've put forward, which I'm hoping will get support, but we'll see what happens. But this is why we need that information. Having outdated information provided by the province doesn't help our cause in any way, shape, or form, or anybody else's for that matter. So that's my pitch for that one. Having said that, based on a report, I think it was through CBC yesterday, the chances of the provincial government making any changes are slim to non-existent, because obviously it wouldn't look good for them in a re-election situation. So 2 cents on that. I do have a couple questions. One, actually it is one question. The district amount you've put in there at 5% and the education at no increase, how confident are we in those numbers?
Thank you, Mayor Kutsier. Through you to Councillor Jarvis. It is entirely an estimate. The district will not be presenting their budget until December. I believe it has been delayed, and they will not be ratifying until January. So it is completely based on an assumption, just to provide council with an example of what a municipal property owner's bill could potentially look like with a 5% increase. Thank you.
And if I may, just as a quick, the district is targeting 5%, but they've also been put in shock by the increase in the OPP billing, as have every municipality in this province. And so they're doing their best to cut other things to still meet that 5%. But see, their biggest challenge is that the OPP have come in with, I forgot what the percentage is, but a huge increase. Including a retroactive adjustment, of course, because it's the 23 billing that they've now presented.
Yeah, and the OPP, that's an issue across the board. And again, another motion under new business that I've got on the table that we can all consider at that time. Sorry, education, did you comment on education?
I'm fairly confident the education will be no change, but we will be confirming as we go through the budget process when we hear from the ministry.
Thank you.
And that could also be reflective of a potential election next year. Councillor Predko, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I also will just take a second and thank you for the presentation format. I think it's excellent for us to be able to see what the baseline is compared to the council and mandatory increases are, and then what the surface level increases are. I think it's very helpful to break those out and look at the types of decisions we're making. The one comment I want to make, and I don't know how this could be addressed or if it can necessarily be addressed in the presentations, but for the some of the items, and I'm thinking primarily about the review optimization and service fee review type items, or the MAT tax items where we have a revenue stream or an increase of fees or changes in our collections that has a positive impact on our budget, but we really haven't passed policies or bylaws to support that. And I'm just wondering if it's possible in some ways to highlight which items are maybe a higher risk, or if there's a mitigating factor that could be identified. Because as we're going through it, I think we need to be cognizant that if we like the bottom line number, but we don't like the service fee review optimization report, these are not aligned, similar to what happened with MAT tax last year.
Thank you, Mayor MacTier. Through you to Councillor Predko. So when we go through the individual departmental budgets, you'll notice the columns that are broken out individually, and it'll show what the base budget is, and it'll show the impact of including a revenue or including an expense, which will then provide you with a total base budget levy, and then the service enhancements are entirely separate as well. So we did try to outline the individual increases to expenses or decreases as a result of a revenue. If there's any other way we could present it, I will think about how I could present it better.
I appreciate that, and it's something I think we just have to keep in our minds, that some of these items, especially the fee increases or positives to the budget, may be something that council will have a broader discussion on, and these numbers might not be at the end of the day what you're forecasting today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you. That's a somewhat overwhelming document, but I did try to read it. I do have some questions, though, just confirming facilities. That's Mr. Sokash. In the past, we've had in our financial documents some numbers that I cannot find here at all. One of the numbers, or a couple of the numbers, are the assessment base, the total assessment base of our township, broken out by residential and non-residential, and then some predictions on what the increases in new assessment values are going to be. Are those numbers in there?
Through you, Mayor MacTier, to Councillor Hazelton. We have included growth. It is on the consolidated budget slides and throughout the budget book. The growth amount currently is only about $108,000. MPAC has decided not to close their control totals until the end of November. So that figure may still be changing, and we'll update that as we go through the budget process as well. So right now, the budget's been presented with growth value of about $108,000 included as additional revenue. We can provide additional detail in terms of assessment based on residential, commercial. That is easy enough for us to do. We can provide that information.
Okay, so your differential number is interesting, but I would like to be able to see the total residential assessment for the township, the non-residential assessment. Those numbers fit in other calculations as well, so that would be very helpful. And then your comment about 108K in growth, that would be tax revenue increase based on additional assessment, but it would be interesting to know what their assessment expectations increase are going to be, not the actual dollar number from a tax standpoint, but the absolute assessment. So new numbers to get, but I would like to ask you a question about MPAC to confirm something. So we're having conversations about MPAC and impact assessment. My understanding is if we have an assessment value, I'm going to just throw it out there, of 10 million, and MPAC does a reassessment, and all of a sudden the new assessment is 20 million. we'll just park that for a second, come back to your budget. Your budget are numbers that are spread across an assessment. And so my understanding is if you double the assessment, you do not double the taxes. In other words, it doesn't matter to anybody whether I have a cottage or property assessed at $500,000 or $1 million or 10 million, as long as everybody's in the same pot. It doesn't matter whether we go through a reassessment. Now, the downside of a reassessment in the past, and there's been a lot of data to confer this, is the assessments, the reassessments have resulted in a shift to additional burden to waterfront properties in the past. I don't know if that would be the situation today, but that has been a result that has been documented in the past. And I'm wondering, given that, and given that 55% of our properties are water-only access, and probably, I don't know, the number is probably a lot more than that, or maybe 75% are waterfront properties, why would we be going down that path? Can you offer any comment on that?
Thank you, Mayor MacTier, through you to Councillor Hazelton. So you are absolutely correct that if there is a reassessment, everyone within that pot, the same residential properties, you would see a net change based on your average increase or decrease to the average household assessment. So if the net increase was, I might actually have our deputy treasurer answer this because she may be better at explaining taxation.
Thank you, Mayor MacTier, and through you to members of council. So if you have a reassessment for MPAC, as your example was, you're starting off at $10 million and you're increasing to $20 million, all a reassessment is doing is redistributing how much each property owner is responsible for of the overall budget. So if every property owner increases at 5%, they're not going to see an increase in their annual property taxes because everybody has increased equally. If any of the properties that are waterfront are seeing a higher increase, that just is based on how MPAC has determined what their assessment is going to be, just based on what their criteria is for assessing those properties. So it does not, just because there's a reassessment, does not determine that all of the waterfront assessment properties are going to increase significantly beyond any of the residential properties. And then if you have any other questions.
So I do have one other follow-up here. I think I heard you say that if there is new construction, that MPAC will reassess, but they will reassess and peg it at the 2016 value. And so if we can then say all construction in the township, whether it be add-ons or new builds, are essentially being assessed on the same fundamental foundation. So we don't have a mismatch of assessments here. The fact that MPAC is out of date really may not have that big an impact on us because MPAC is going around for each individual new build, extension, add-on, and reassessing that property in context of everything else. Is that a fair statement?
Through you, Mayor MacTier, to Councillor Hazelton. I'll start, and if Deputy Treasurer has anything to add. I do 100% agree with you that ultimately, when you look at it in that sense, if we're all being evaluated at the 2016 current value rates, yes, nothing will change. New assessment just adds on and redistributes the tax. But the problem is that the longer we wait, we don't know what the potential impact could be. Homes currently, new builds that are assessed at 2016 rates, are they paying their fair share? And I think that's the question homeowners are asking MPAC and municipalities are asking MPAC. What is the actual impact going to be? And the longer we wait, the more unknowns there become. And I think that's what the risk is, more than actually knowing. If everyone's reassessed and if they're all reassessed at the same value, then it won't be such a major impact, but we don't know what that assessment is even going to look like right now.
Okay, I'll pause there for the moment. I just, my gut feel is, based on what you've been saying and what I've seen, is that as long as we pick a year and we're all assessed based on that year, regardless of new builds or whatever, then we essentially have a mostly fair system. But if we want to arbitrarily come up with some new reassessment, then presumably if it's fair and everybody is pegged at the same year, then we shouldn't, a property owner shouldn't really experience much change in the taxes they pay with a reassessment. Thank you.
All right. Interesting discussion, but I don't want us to go any too much further down that road simply because we're stuck with it. And the fairness or lack of fairness and the lack of reassessment we can debate, but we're stuck with it. And I think, like anything else, some people in our township will be winners and some people will be losers, you know, and to a degree because of the 2016 valuations. Before I start the second round, I'm going to read the motion that's in front of me just as a reminder to everybody, not because I'm going to call for the vote, but just for a reminder of what's in front of us. And that is moved by Councillor Pedco, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved, the report from the Director of Finance regarding the 2025 proposed budget dated November 4th, 2024 be received. And that the 2025 operating budget and proposed 2025 capital budget as presented November 4th, 2024 be referred to the special budget meeting of council for deliberation and consideration. And that, of course, would be November 26th. And that council approve the creation of an indemnification of council employees reserve in the amount of $56,000. And that funds in the amount of $56,000 be appropriated from the tax rate stabilization reserve as to not impact the tax levy for 2025, and that council establish a food bank reserve to support our community's food assistance program, and that a bylaw to approve the fees and charges for 2025 be presented for consideration at the December 9, 2024 meeting of council for final approval, and that council adopt the compliance report of 2025 expenses that have been excluded from the 2025 proposed budget presented November 4th, 2024, and is outlined in the subject report as a requirement of Ontario Regulation 284/09 of the Municipal Act 2001. So that's what's in front of us. And now we'll go round two. And Councillor Cooper, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll be very brief. I just wanted to comment about the assessment issue and remind us that, well, it should be reasonable to find a fair solution if we even have a new assessment, but I will remind us that in previous administrations, I'm now going back in my history, probably too far, but with higher assessments at certain periods of time in this particular township, taxes were increased significantly when the assessments were changed. And we need to be aware of that. I'm talking more than 10 years ago. But another way of looking at it is I have essentially a building here that's not changed a whole lot in the last 10 or 15 years, but my taxes have gone up by about 130%. Thank you.
Council, any other comments or questions? You know we're going to be discussing this further in a number of meetings. Seeing none, I'm going to call the motion. All those in favor? And I have at least enough people to say that is carried. Thank you very much. Second staff report, Community Sports and Recreation Infrastructure Fund from our Sustainability Department. Is Ms. Schneier presenting that? Or who is going to talk to us? Oh, I see Ms. Walton. Are you the spokesperson for this?
Through you, Mayor? Sure.
Then let's do it, please.
All right.
I'm right here. I apologize.
Okay. I will go mute then. You talk.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this report. It's a application that we have submitted on behalf of the municipality to do some repair and rehabilitation to the Baxter Ward Community Center. The reason why we chose this building is because it is a well-used facility and is in our asset management plan. The budget for the application is $1 million, and while I'm not being obtuse by suggesting it's only $1 million, there's only so much you can do in the $1 million mark, and this building is possible to be repaired and rehabilitated to today's standard within that budget, whereas we have other facilities that wouldn't meet that criteria. Having said that, we chose this building based on the asset management plan and the capability of the municipality to be able to do the repair and rehabilitation within the subjected time frame that the grant has provided. So I present to you today the application. So it does allow the municipality to get up to 70% of funding because we're a municipality of less than 20,000 residents. And that would allow us to accept funds in the amount prescribed in the recommendation, leaving $285,000 that would be brought forward possibly from the capital funds if this grant was to be successful. It is not a budgeted item because the new position of the financial services is to wait until the application is successful and then come to council to speak about what is already existing in the capital reserves.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Ms. Schneier, for the report. I'm curious, in just reviewing this, there's been conversations that I've had with constituents along with fellow councillors with regards to the Baxter Ward facility. And there's some concern still today with respect to the outdoor arena. Is there any way that should these funds become available by way of grant and a top up by the municipality, that some of the funds get allocated towards rehabilitating the outdoor arena as well? I know that it's not widely used in the wintertime because it's not really functional all the time, where there's bare concrete showing through the ice, amongst other issues. So my question to you is, with the list that you've outlined, is that a static list, or can we go ahead and reallocate funds as we see fit?
Thank you. Through Councillor Graziano, through you, Mayor MacTier, the project would be static. If we say that we're doing this, then this is what we have to do. And I'm not really quite sure what arena you're speaking about, the arena outside the Baxter Ward Community Center or just an outdoor arena in general?
The arena outside of the Baxter Ward Community Center.
So there was no request from the operations department for any repair and rehabilitation at that point. So there's nothing that needed to be done.
Follow up, if I may. Perhaps it'd be prudent for myself and our operations department to have a discussion before the formal application goes in, or has the formal application already gone in?
The formal application, through your worship to Councillor Graziano, the formal application has already been submitted, and this is we can withdraw it if it's the will of council not to move forward with this application. But we had a deadline of October 27th that we needed to meet, and in order to meet that criteria, it didn't match with council's agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Predko, please.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship, just two questions, both for our Director of Sustainability. The first, Ms. Schneier, in addition to this provincial recreational facility upgrade grant, is there any opportunity to additionally ask for funding from FCM for the greenhouse gas initiative program as well, or can that not be done in conjunction with each other?
It normally can be done in conjunction, but FCM unfortunately has a timeline that would be debilitating for us to be able to move forward with this grant, in that the timeline to get from application to dollars in your account is quite long and would probably jeopardize the project. So we have made a comment about that in the application, that we will not be pursuing FCM funding for this portion of the project because we don't think we can meet the timeline.
Okay, and that doesn't mean that we have more potential FCM funds available for other infrastructure projects? It's just they have a set 80% or something, is that correct?
Well, it actually would mean more allocation to other applications through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Predko. The 80% would be reallocated to other buildings, and that percentage wouldn't. Yes, more would go to more facilities, and this would be one less facility that would be under that funding model.
Okay, thank you. And Your Worship, a follow-up question. I know you have said that the reason to pick the Baxter Ward Community Center is it's a well-used facility. It's in the asset management plan. $1 million will cover the upgrades that you have identified as being necessary. My only comment is that we have other facilities in other areas of the township, such as in MacTier and the arena, which are also in need of upgrades. And I know the people in MacTier are watching and asking, why do the South End facilities get more attention or first attention rather than the North End? And I would just like to ask that as you go through these evaluations to keep in mind that, perhaps in some instances there could be a MacTier first, so that we make sure there's not a perceived imbalance of attention in the township. Thank you.
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Predko, is that a question, or do you want me to comment on that?
It's more of a statement, but
Director Sokash was offering to provide some input as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through the mayor, there have been some significant upgrades to the MacTier Arena that have happened in recent years. There was a new roof put on for, I think we were in the $500,000 or $1 million range. There have been other upgrades as well. So things do get spread around, and although there may be a perception that one area is being favored over another, I think MacTier is definitely being considered and receiving quite a bit of funding and projects from the township.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, two questions. One to our Director of Operations. We redid the floor of that outdoor arena at Baxter Ward just a couple of years ago, right?
Through the mayor, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Sure. Okay. To our Director of Sustainability, just further to comments I made earlier on, I realize that the amounts being applied for here are very specifically directed at a recreation center, but we obviously, there is consideration for the possibility of moving our Port Severn Library branch down there, and I presume that is something that is on your mind, and I'm just asking if that is the case.
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Predko, there are two streams of this application. There's repair and rehabilitation, and then there's a rebuild. And if we are successful with this is repair and rehabilitation, and then the rebuild would require a lot of studies on our part before we apply. We don't have those studies about what would be needed for infrastructure, engineer drawings, costing, et cetera, to move a library. So that is not something that can be considered right now. If it's the will of council, you can direct us to move forward with that, but we don't have any documents. The good news is that we have a significant amount of documents to do repair and rehabilitation. So it was a relatively easy grant for us to write, in that we had hard data and real information that we could provide to this funder to say, this is the outcome that you will see with these repair and rehabilitation. So it was very advantageous for us because we have those studies completed.
Okay, well, then I'll just comment that I think we're sitting down with you and our CAO with regards to the possibility of, in the future, looking at putting the library branch down there. But thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Just want to say ditto to Councillor Jarvis's comments. I think we need to consider the facilities for the library. We've heard that our CAO would like to use the library consumed space in the community services building. And I think that the Baxter Ward Community Center is an ideal target. And so I think we need to be proactive in getting proposed solutions in place so that when there's an opportunity to seek funding, that we are prepared for it, as it appears we're prepared to seek funding for refurbishment. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to comment that I think applications like this are serve our community overall very well, because as we commented earlier on the budget, our capital expenditures over the next 10 years are significantly higher than our capital reserve buildup. But something like this, where 70% of the cost, and I presume that 1.3 or $1.4 million project cost is in that 10-year capital budget, because it is required work. But when we can receive funding that takes that can pay up to 70% of our cost to do work that is necessary anyway, I think it behooves us to take advantage of that. And yes, sometimes it'll be for the south end of the township, sometimes it'll be for the north end of the township. Who knows? Sometimes it might be for the middle. I think that I hope that we have opportunities like this presented to us in more often in council meetings going forward. I think I think it's very good that we can get our other levels of government to help us out on our projects here. I've moved by Councillor Hazelton, second by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that council directs staff to apply and accept funds in the amount of $950,330 and that $407,285 be allocated from capital reserves to the project should the grant be approved. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3. And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. New business. Under new business, the first item is to select a Severn Sound Environmental Association council representative as due to Councillor Vocek's resignation from that position. So I open it up to council. Councillor Vocek.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, I wanted to just make a statement here so that the rest of council and anybody here listening understands why I'm resigning from the committees that I'm resigning from. And basically, I sit on 7 committees. And since April this year, I have not been able to drive. And my wife, being very good with accounting, has accumulated all our bills due to gas, attending events, attending meetings, hotel stays, et cetera, et cetera. We've spent $4,500 out of our pockets with no way of recapturing that. So not only do my health concerns restrict me because I don't have a driver's license, since April it's cost us a lot. So I'm resigning from these committees, not because I don't believe in their value or their worth, but I believe we need to be there in attendance to relay what the Township of Georgian Bay really needs. And I don't think that's effectively done by Zoom. Although whoever succeeds me in these committees have the ability to Zoom all of the meetings, I really don't think we're effective Zooming our meetings. They need to hear it from us with our concerns face to face. So this is why I'm stepping down from the 2 committees.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
I would like to nominate Councillor Graziano.
Councillor Graziano, would you accept such a nomination?
I would accept as long as Councillor Hazelton accepts the nomination for the Water Council.
Well, wait a minute. Let's do one at a time here.
Yes, with respect.
Is any other comments, nominations, or what have you? Councillor Jarvis.
In the past, the SSA has requested that the rep from council also be a rep at district. Is that not a requirement? That was my understanding after first term. That's just why I never applied for that position. I
What-
thought there
sorry.
was a district requirement for that representative.
No,
No? Okay.
I don't believe,
Misunderstanding on my part then.
I don't believe there is a requirement that the SSEA
Well,
representative.
it wasn't a requirement, it was a request. That they also have a position of district. But if that's not the case, then my misunderstanding.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
In your worship, I'm happy to make way to Councillor Jarvis if in the event that he wishes to sit on the SSEA.
No, it's quite all right.
Okay. Okay. Interesting enough, the motion that's in front of me actually had your name as number one and Hazelton as a seconder, pre-printed before any discussion. So if you're, okay. Any other questions, comments, nominations, volunteers, what have you? All right. Councillor Bochek.
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time through you, Mr. Mayor, but when I was appointed, there was also an alternative appointed in case I was unable to attend, and I don't know if we should appoint that alternative at this meeting or at a later date.
Ms. Way.
An alternative is not required for SSEA. However, Councillor Graziano is currently the alternate for Councillor Bochek. But again, the Watershed Council also doesn't have an alternate. Most of our committees do not.
And I presume that somebody can informally request somebody to go in their stead if they're not able to go without council direction. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. All right, so I have moved by Councillor Bochek, second by Councillor Hazelton. Whereas Councillor Bochek has resigned from the Severn Sound Environmental Association, be it resolved that Councillor Graziano be appointed to the, can't write in your highlighting, sorry. Be it resolved that Councillor Graziano be appointed to the SSEA. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. There was enough votes without your vote.
Conflict of interest?
I don't think so in this situation for some reason. Okay, now we get to do it all over again for Muskoka Watershed Council, Muskoka rather. And again, I have moved by Councillor Bochek, second by Councillor Cooper, whereas Councillor Bochek has resigned for the Muskoka Watershed Council. Be it resolved that Councillor Blank be appointed to the Muskoka Watershed Council. Any comments, questions? Councillor Bochek.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, once again, a little bit of what this involves. Very different than the SSEA. It's a watershed program which deals with concerns of what comes off the watershed and where it ends up is the basis of it all. These meetings happen in Bracebridge, Baysville, Huntsville. They happen in different locations, and the events are in different locations. And once again, I'm found to be not being able to travel to those locations at a efficient rate. So I've asked to resign, and I would like to nominate Councillor Jarvis if I'm allowed to nominate. I'd like to nominate
Any councillors allowed to nominate?
Okay, then I'd like to nominate Councillor Jarvis.
Councillor Jarvis, do you have any interest in accepting that nomination?
I do have some questions, and that one is, can those meetings be attended to via remotely, that is?
So I have attended most of the meetings remotely. I do like to go to the events because they're educational and informs me to better understand during the Zoom meetings. In my 2 years appointment, I've attended 3 meetings in person, 3 events in person, and the rest has been done via Zoom.
Appreciate that. I have no problem with the nomination. Thank you.
Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Worship, and nothing against Councillor Jarvis. However, I had earlier nominated Councillor Hazelton. Councillor Hazelton and I, amongst other councillors, had worked on the water quality working group, and Councillor Hazelton chairing that group, he brought a wealth of knowledge on water quality. So I felt that if anything with the Muskoka watershed, it would likely also benefit Councillor Hazelton. So happy to nominate Councillor Hazelton if he wishes to make way, or if one of the two wish to make way. I'll leave it to the two of them. But again, I think based on my experiences with him at the water quality group, he would bring value to that committee.
Councillor Hazelton, would you be willing to accept that nomination?
Yes.
Okay. Next, Councillor Jarvis, you had your hand up.
I was just took it down, but I would have no opposition to Councillor Hazelton with his background
Okay.
in water quality testing. Probably is a better position than I would be
Okay.
on that council. So I wouldn't have an objection to that.
Councillor Cooper.
Turns out it's sort of a ditto. But I just wanted to say that, I'm sure that Councillor Jarvis would have been an excellent representative, but I think Councillor Hazelton does bring quite a bit of experience to the table as it pertains to water quality. And I think the other aspect of it is that I haven't attended all the watershed meetings, but some of them. And I think that the Township of Georgian Bay could benefit from Councillor Hazelton's focus on not only his understanding, but perhaps returning some more ROI as it pertains to the Watershed Council. More focus for the Township of Georgian Bay, more return on our investment in those dollars that go in that direction. Thank you.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to say all those in favor of Councillor Hazelton. And that is carried. Thank you. Again, I got enough votes without his vote. So and Councillor, and Clerk Way has already confirmed there's no conflict of interest regardless. But I would not count Councillor Hazelton twice. So let me get that very clear.
No, well they did. I missed my.
Your speaker's on. There we go. All right. Next item: support for Port Severn Campers Association sewer charge appeal. Councillor Graziano.
Yes, and thank you, Your Worship. Through you, the report is relatively explanatory. Essentially, the PSCA, who operates Wildwood by the Severn, has recently incurred a large and significantly larger sewage/water bill with respect to their average norms, and upon investigating further have determined that the fluctuations of water pressure at where the municipal connection meets the private connection has caused havoc and has wreaked havoc amongst their internal plumbing network. They have since rectified the situation. It's been a lengthy adventure for them. They had to first determine where was the source of the problem, followed by, once that was done, and pressure regulators, which regulated, and from what I understand, based on the comments, their pressure went from 65 psi to 85 psi to 100 psi at any given time, and in understanding that, they had connected pressure regulators, but then had to go repair the damage within their own infrastructure because there was multiple leak points that were underground, unbeknownst to them. So they have since been working with the District of Muskoka to try to receive somewhat of a rebate and a refund under consideration for this situation. The District of Muskoka hasn't been the quickest in getting back to them, and it's been an ongoing concern to them. And as we can imagine, anyone owing upwards of $40,000 or $50,000 in excess of your normal bill, it can be pretty stressful at the same time. So my resolution is requesting that we show support to the PSCA's situation, and that we direct staff to draft a letter in support to the District of Muskoka, requesting that the district expedite their response as best as they can, and consider a credit for the sewers portion losses in 2022 and 2023. Keep in mind that they've invested a significant amount of money in trying to update their infrastructure to mitigate this problem from reoccurring in future as well, in case the pressure regulator at the connection point fails for whatever reason. And that this copy of this motion be shared with the PSCA as well as the District of Muskoka. So over to Council for discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Wojcik.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. I've certainly been abreast of all the information of what's happened, and I certainly have a little bit of background in the construction side of things. And knowing that, when you connect to municipal services, you have certain regulations that you need to meet. Household, you run at 65 pounds, et cetera. But when your infrastructure is designed to be a maximum of 75, when the district has a head pressure of 100 or 120, it blows things apart. And those things are under 4 feet of ground to be below the frost level. It costs this company a fortune because of what happened to the district or from the district. I would suggest, and I don't know, the mayor and Mr. Cooper could maybe give me some advice on this, but I think this would be a matter that would be brought in front of the EPW committee under new business. And then I'm not sure if they have the ability to approve this, or then it would be taken up to district for approval. But I think it would be advantageous for us to bring a resolution to the EPW committee and have them address it, a small number, and then take it up to district council. That's my points. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
I'll have a comment in a second. I have a question though. Just to confirm, the water that was lost through the leakage did not make it into the sewage system. Is that correct?
From my understanding, no, it did not. No.
Okay.
Made its way into the ground unbeknownst to the association.
Okay, so I've done in previous years some research in sewage treatment systems and understood their billing models. And their billing models charge for the sewage. They never monitor and measure sewage coming in. All they do is monitor the water going out and charge you a fabricated number on sewage based on the water that's gone out. In this case, the water that has gone out has never made it back into the sewage treatment system. So as far as I'm concerned, there has been zero burden on the sewage treatment system from the water that might have gone out and been used and therefore returned. So I think that there is every reason in the world to very actively support this resolution, in that the model is broken in this case. The water that was sent out never got back. So fully support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bocek, for volunteering my services. I'm happy to assist. I do feel also that there needs to be some, allowances made in this particular case, and I think something for the EPW committee would be a good idea. I do have a meeting with the commissioner in a few days, and I could be happy to have a discussion, but I think if it came forward formally in front of the EPW, that from our council would be a good idea. So if there was a resolution to that effect, I'd be happy to support it at the EPW, but I'm also willing to work on it behind the scenes. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no problem supporting this other than to make one comment, and that is we've only heard one side of the story, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying anything's false here. Don't misunderstand me. But I'm surprised that the district has not responded, and I'd be curious as to why they have not responded to date. And I don't know the answer. But having said that, I am moved by Councillor Graziano, second by Councillor Bocek. Whereas the Port 7 Campers Association has made substantial efforts to identify, repair, and mitigate water leaks that led to inflated sewer charges. And whereas the PSCA has undertaken the necessary actions to submit a formal appeal to the District of Muskoka for relief from the excessive sewer portion of water usage charges, and whereas the ongoing delay in addressing this appeal places an undue financial burden on the PSCA, now, therefore, be it resolved, the Township of Georgia Bay Council expresses its formal support for the PSCA's appeal to the District of Muskoka for a reduction in sewer charges directly related to water losses caused by infrastructure leaks, and that staff be directed to draft and send a letter of support to the District of Muskoka requesting that the district expedite their response to the PSCA appeal and consider a credit for the sewer portion of water losses in 2022 and 2023, and that a copy of this motion be shared with the PSCA and relevant district officials to ensure that appeal process moves forward promptly. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay. Bracebridge Support Resolution, AMCTO recommendations for updates to the Municipal Elections Act. Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, I'm hoping this is pretty much self-explanatory within the information that was provided. I don't think there's anything more needs to be discussed here. I think we just need some action with regards to updating our Elections Act. I know that at this level, it's probably unlikely that there'll be any interference, as has been suggested at federal and provincial levels. But I think that an updated act would be a significant improvement on what we have in place at this time. And I'm recommending that we put our names on the recommendation brought forth by Bracebridge.
Council, any discussion? Well, I'll read the motion, give you time to think. Moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that Council support the Bracebridge resolution and the Council directs staff to draft a letter to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Minister of Education, the Minister of Public and Business Services Delivery, Minister of Finance, the Premier of Ontario, the local member of Provincial Parliament, AMCTO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and all Ontario municipalities. All those in favor? And that is carried. And I discovered I skipped a motion. I apologize for the confusion. So we're going to go back to Community Services Office in MacTier. And I'm going to read the motion because I think it's self-explanatory. Thank you. And that if there's any discussion, I will open the floor up to that after I read the motion. Moved by Councillor Predko, second by Councillor Graziano. Whereas the Community Services Office in MacTier is mutually beneficial to the Township of Georgian Bay and the Ontario Provincial Police. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay permits the Community Service Office at 16 Muskoka Road, which is Fire Station 2, in MacTier for use by the Ontario Provincial Police Bracebridge Detachment. And that the Township of Georgian Bay, as the owner of 16 Muskoka Road, Fire Station 2, in MacTier, is responsible for providing suitable office accommodations, utilities, excuse me, including but not limited to hydro and heating, office furniture, telephone, including long-distance calls, internet connectivity, janitorial requirements, and other maintenance. All those, oh, sorry, any discussion? Councillor Cooper. Zip, I believe. Councillor Bochek.
I think this is a great resolution. I've been contacted many times, as probably Councillor Pretko has, but over the years, there's been a real deficiency of OPP presence, and the masses up there are very excited about this coming to their town.
Thank you. Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Worship. I'm curious, will the OPP's new office, should this pass, be right next door to the marijuana sales facility? And if so, then it's been an interesting change of times, that's for sure.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Jarvis.
Just curious, as follow-up to comments made about rent. Is this a facility that we're currently already paying for, to maintain heat, utilities, and all that stuff?
This is our fire
So there really is no,
station.
yeah, okay, yeah. So there'd be no change from the municipal standpoint on costs. It would just be that we have somebody occupying it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. While we're all asking questions, I'll just throw one in as well. Just to confirm with our CAO and through the chair, that this is a day shift community policing service. It's not necessarily going to be an evening endeavor. It's just primarily through the day.
CEO Mariotti.
Through you, MacTier, it's actually it's available 24/7. So anytime that there is a call, it could even be a call out to the 400. And then the officer, instead of going all the way back to Bracebridge, the officer can actually stop in MacTier, which is closer, and do the paperwork or have a restroom break. So it really is, the access is 24/7.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Cooper, is that a second hand?
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, Mayor, it is. Just very briefly, aside from the rent comment, I was going to suggest that we have a fresh air intake from the neighbors next door. Thank you.
God. Councillor Graziano, this discussion's deteriorating, isn't it?
Thank you. This will not be humor, rather perhaps prudence. Would it be wise that we consider putting something in for the length of time in which we allow this to occur? So do we renew every term of council rather than what I would assume is in perpetuity? So.
CEO Mariotti, has there been a time limit considered?
No, it's a relatively informal arrangement. We have an existing arrangement with the Southern Georgian Bay Detachment here in Port Seven. So our operations building has a similar office to house OPP. So we could put a time frame in. I mean, ideally, we'd want to have them move in, full time in a building of their own. Who knows? But this, at least, it allows us to get a foot in the door by having an additional EMS service in the area.
Thank you. Councillor Wojcik, did I see your hand again?
Through you, Mayor, just to be clear here, there will be no administration attached to this. In other words, if somebody wanted to walk into this station and make a complaint or gain access to anything, that wouldn't be available. That would still be a call to the Bracebridge OPP and then detached, or somebody detached from MacTier.
So if it's a 911 call, if it's an emergency call, 911. My vision for this location is that if it's to me, it's even people dropping in to say hello and welcoming them. If they see a patrol car outside, go in, say hello, and if there is something of a non-urgent nature, then yes, they're aware that folks may be knocking on the door, and so there should be that kind of a response, no different than a cruiser being parked on the side of the road.
So I think we have to recognize there will not be somebody permanently in that office. It's simply a place for an officer to drop in, write a report, use the washroom. And so it's if you're wanting to meet an officer, it's sheer luck whether or not somebody's actually there versus on the road.
So there'll be no. Yeah. My concern was with if somebody in MacTier was having an urgent problem, would there be a phone in the station that they could phone to and get an instant response? Or do they have to phone up to Bracebridge and Bracebridge then responds?
If they want something urgent, 911.
Yeah, okay.
911.
That's the questions that were being asked of me, so that's great answers.
911 will bring the closest officer geographically regardless of detachment.
Good, great, thank you.
All right. Moved by Councillor Preto, second. Did I already read this? No, yes? I read it. Okay, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. All right, where are we next? We're going down F, Georgian Bluffs. Councillor Jarvis. Sustainable funding for small rural municipalities, OPP funding. This, I think, has come up before.
Yes,
go ahead.
oddly
please,
enough, we've already talked about OPP funding with regards to the district and the burden it's placing on all municipalities, not to mention the district. And I think it would behoove us to support this resolution. The provincial government has become, over the years, very good at downloading. This is one of those items that was downloaded a number of years ago. Let's just give it right back to them. It's becoming a very, very expensive proposition for small municipalities, among other things. And I think supporting this resolution would be a very, very good idea.
Councillor Wojcik.
Yeah, I agree. Supporting this resolution is a good idea because, as we all know, our towns, the OPP took over for our town police departments. So the town of Midland had a budget which they could work with their 5 or 6 cars and their department. And through the OPP, all of these small town police departments are gone. And as soon as they were all gone, then we seen the big increases of the OPP budget. And I think it was sort of a blindside to everybody that the cost savings were by getting rid of your local police department, joining the OPP, and everything would be cheaper. Well, it's not. It's far more expensive. So can't agree with this any more than what it was stated.
And I just want to add to that is that, and this is in my mind, no reflection on the quality of service that the OPP has provided us and is trying to provide all of us. But for them, as municipalities are preparing their 2025 budget, they suddenly show up and say, oh, by the way, in 2023, your costs have gone up significantly and we now want you to pay it, is totally unfair. Why we can question why it takes them close to a year to provide their annual report and hit us, and the fact that they're allowed to do so. But anyway, that's my little editorial. So I have moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that Council support Georgian Bluffs Resolution RES 2024-179, and that Council directs staff to draft a letter to the Township of Georgian Bluffs and the Township of Tweed in support. Councillor Hazelton. Well, that's a good question. Why
Sending to the other townships is nice, but
we will copy
sending to the province and CCing the other townships is probably what we want.
Through the mayor, yes, that's right. We should be copying the appropriate personnel at the provincial level.
I'll just say, and copy province, and we'll let the staff come up with based on these other things, the right addresses.
Okay.
No. All those in favor? Thank you. And St. Charles support resolution. Councillor Jarvis, you clearly are paying close attention to CIP. Thank you.
I read something
urging
anyway.
government to promptly resume assessment cycle.
Apropos of comments made with regards to budget and the value of properties being stuck in 2016, and that in and of itself being somewhat awkward because we don't have a full evaluation of anything that's been built between now and then, properly assessed. I think that the idea here is to get things up to date. My understanding, and I hope I am correct in this, is that this does not directly impact what people would be paying in taxes, unless, of course, there is a huge difference in the assessed value of the property between 2016 and now relative to other properties. That is, I suppose that is an ongoing concern, but I think it behooves the province to provide us all with an more accurate assessed value for our properties. And I mean, we had that delay in 2016. We had delay with COVID. My understanding right now is the provincial government probably is not keen on doing anything to that effect right now because it would not look good from a re-election standpoint. I do wish that politicians were more concerned with their constituents and what was going on in their province as opposed to just being re-elected, but that's the way things go. I think we should be supporting this just because things need to be updated. We all know that it's always a good idea to have accurate and updated information.
Thank you. Councillor Bochuk.
Thank you. And I'd like to get a better understanding of a few things here, but to preface this, I talked to my constituency, the Kiddo family, which paid $11 taxes, and then when Freeman became a township, it went to $35 taxes. And then in 72, we became the Township of Georgian Bay, and the taxes have gone right through the roof. You can't tell me this has nothing to do with assessment or property values. I don't understand. I know that services of the Township of Georgian Bay and our commitments to other identities create the overall budget, and we have to divide that amongst all of our residents. But I see flaws in the system. It's been brought to me a number of times that our commercial properties, say a resort, are taxed based on the value of the property, yet they're closed 6 months a year, and they have no revenues coming in for that 6 months. So while I see Councillor Jarvis's point here, I think we need to do a deep dive into some, and we're going to do that during the budget process, but I support Councillor Jarvis's, and I think there's a little bit more involved in this than just what we're seeing in this resolution. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. And while I agreed to have my name on as a seconder, I am of the view that this could impact our ratepayers, and I'd rather not own it. I'd rather the province own it. It's their job. So I think the impact process is something that the province needs to get on with, but they haven't done that, and maybe they will in due course. In the meantime, sorry, but I'd rather not support this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to make a couple, I'm going to make a couple of comments. One is that Councillor Bocek, whether he realized or not, turned his camera off. Secondly, that secondly, I think Councillor Bocek, we have to recognize that I think it was back in the early 90s. Somebody might correct me, but at some point, that's when when the province, not the township, the province made the decision to go to market value assessment as a property tax base. And we've seen the combination of that and the ongoing downloading of responsibilities from the province to municipalities is behind the tax increases that all of us have experienced. I think going back to call it the 50s or 60s and paying $30 worth of property tax, you can fantasize to your heart's content, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think I personally believe that MPAC should update their assessment simply because while they are trying to assess everything based on 2016, if somebody comes along and prepares a new build or an addition or what have you, it's costing a heck of a lot more to do now than it did 10 years ago, but they're only being assessed as if it would cost what it did 10 years ago, and yet their property value, it may have gone up by $250,000 and their tax base has only gone up by $50,000. Does that make sense? No, in my opinion. But having said that, I mean, and I will vote in favor of this, but I think it's a wasted vote in that I don't think the province is going to pay any attention to us if they plan on having an election next year. And all evidence is that's where they're headed. I'm going to go to Councillor Hazelton because you got to stuck your hand up, and then I'll go back to Councillor Jarvis.
Something that may be useful is, first of all, the resolution is attempting to drive the government to change policies and do something. But your comment, Mayor, about people building something and their taxes don't go up. My understanding is that the building department is tightly linked with MPAC. And every time you get a building permit, it goes to MPAC, and MPAC then is waiting and chomping at the bit to come out and reassess once it's done. But I'm looking around in our community, and I can assure you, based on the numbers that are in our online databases, that the numbers that MPAC is currently using do not reflect building permits issued by many properties. And I'm wondering, what path do we as a township have to ensure that the information is freely flowing to MPAC so that when it comes to fairness, it's fair if somebody goes and spends $500,000 to increase the size and fanciness of their property, that information goes to MPAC, and then MPAC does this reassessment, maybe based on the 2016 year, but at least they're reassessing it, and the taxes paid will increase dramatically as a result of that. But if they're not reacting, or building permits are falling between the cracks, change doesn't happen.
Through your worship to Councillor Hazelton, they do get MPAC does receive monthly reports from us. So they receive all issued building permits reports, which include what the application is for, including construction value as well. They also receive copies of occupancy and final inspections monthly. So they are up to date. When they require more information, they generally give us an email and come into the office and actually review open files or plans. Now, I'm not sure if that obviously at some point in time will probably change electronically, but currently we're not there yet.
I can tell you from personal experience, because I built a modest boathouse in 2022, that I got a exceptionally confusing note from Impact about half a year ago, 2024, adjusting my assessed value. And what they did, if I read it, because they don't do anything, they don't tell you anything straightforward, but what they did is they said, how much would that building have cost in 2012? Because don't forget, you know, and then they adjusted it up to 2016, and they said, therefore, you know, your property value has gone up by, I forget what the number was, but I'm going to say 10 grand, and I can tell you that building cost a heck of a lot more than 10 grand given current material supplies. So and hence we hear that, you know, our tax base is going up by a certain amount this year. That certain amount is based on them doing weird math starting in 2012 and moving up to 2016.
So you think you should be assessed more than a 10 grand?
Oh, in fairness, yes. You may.
Thank you. You are actually pretty close on to the point of the reform was done in 1998 by MPAC, actually by the province of Ontario, to have MPAC do the reassessments. Prior to that, the municipalities were doing the assessments for their areas. And then in 2008, it went to every 4 years. The 2012 to 2016 that you're seeing on your assessment forms are confusing to anybody that doesn't actually do property taxes. So prior to the reassessment, the property taxes were phased in over a 4-year phase in. So that's why you're seeing the 2012, because they still need that value in their system to actually work out the 2016 value. As far as a personal interpretation for the reassessment is that if you do have a property that's being built now and they're going back to 2016 as a value, as a supplemental value, and you are also looking at properties that were actually built in 2016 and being assessed at that point in time, there is a bit of a gap. Some residents in that manner may see tax adjustments or increases, but that again is to the province as well.
Okay, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry to have to do this, but I'm going to ask for a recorded vote, please. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, just two things. I think putting on a name on a motion as a seconder, as a mover, is by way of getting motions onto the floor for discussion. It doesn't necessarily mean you support them. So I know I've had discussions with Councillor Cooper already preceding this, and I welcome his comments, whatever they are. So that's always good. Just to address things, and I think it's already been stated, I'm just going to restate it because we seem to be missing a point here. And if you look at the original resolution that came through from Colander, it says right there, the pause in the assessment cycle has created uncertainty and instability in property taxation, impacting both residential and commercial property owners. I think that's crucial to understand that having updated information is always better than dealing with information that's over 8 years old, and hence the motion on the floor today. Thank you.
Councillor Wojcik.
Thank you. And if I could, through you, Mayor, I'd like to ask a question of our Finance or Treasury Department, Jazz, if you could indulge me in this. So my understanding is there's one big pot that needs to be paid from taxes. I have a working group that I work with in Barrie, and it talks about the increases in population in different areas of our province and the values. So here's the question. I'm going to use me for an example. When I bought my house, it was $159,000 in Port Severn here. It's now been assessed at $750,000, and with the mindset
clarification, that's not an impact assessment.
No, yeah, okay. So my mindset is with the influx of people leaving the city and coming up to our area, they don't want to go by boat out to an island. They want a residence, which is on the mainland, which is driving the price of the mainland homes way, way up. So here's my question. if the pot of money only needs to reach a certain amount and the inland homes go way up in price and we're collecting more taxes, wouldn't that lower the tax on the people on the bay if we're splitting it all up? That's where I'm having a problem comprehending this. And if you want to take this offline, I'll go to your office and talk about it because it's probably more complex than everybody needs to hear here in the room.
I can, thank you, Mayor Coetzee, through you to Councillor Bocek. I can start, but I would be more than happy to meet with you offline as well. But in that sense, where if a household's MPAC assessment goes up compared to the same rate of the average house, then that house will pay more. Same with if an average house's assessment goes down the same level of the average home, that home will pay less. So market value versus MPAC assessment value, unfortunately, the gap is getting larger. They're no longer the same thing anymore. Usually you could look at a house that's sold next to you and figure out how close your assessment is going to be. But right now, market value does not even closely represent what MPAC value is and what your taxes are based on.
Okay, supplement if I could. So hypothetically, if we have more developments like Oak Bay and everything else, and the inland creates this huge amount of money in taxes because the values are going up because they need the residential land, but on the coast, those values are coming down because the driving of the inland is going up. So in that case, would there be a reduction of the taxes to the bay because we have already met what we needed in the way of revenues?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coetzee, to Councillor Bocek. In theory, yes.
Okay.
But only if everyone was getting reassessed.
Correct. So that's what I needed to hear so that I can move on with you to have the conversation.
Yeah, because in very simple terms, and let me make a scenario. Let's assume MPAC comes in, and on average, in the entire township, everybody, it's gone up 100%. Our values have doubled. It's not a ridiculous suggestion given the market. So then the question is, your individual house per MPAC, has it gone up by 100%, or has it gone up by 120, or has it gone up by 80? Because if it's also gone up by 100%, you're paying exactly the same share you did before. But if it's gone up by 120, you're paying a pinch more. If it's gone down by 80, you're paying a pinch less.
So again, if the inland gets developed and we can get all of the tax money we need from the inland to cover all of our services.
It doesn't quite work that way.
But if we said all of a sudden had a population of 10,000 people.
Okay, but that's growth. So if all of a sudden we have 20% more homes, that means everybody that already existed, they're paying whatever works out to be 85%. Like, in other words, but don't forget, yes, we can have 20% more growth, but also our bill around here is going to go up by a certain percentage because we have to do more and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But yes, growth in theory means existing people will have to pay a slightly lower percentage of tax. That's the theory. Doesn't always work that way. Councillor Cooper.
That's why the finance guys understand.
I'll be very brief, but I just want to clarify one misunderstanding, I think, and that is that I don't know where this is coming from, but the waterfront properties in our township over the last 10 years have gone through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Not that there haven't been increases on land-based values, but the waterfront has been crazy. So the concept that it's going to go higher, the taxes are going to be covered off by the land base is just not valid. Sorry.
All right. Enough discussion. Let me read the motion, and then Clerk Way will take over the count. Moved by Councillor Jarvis, sent by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that Council supports the St. Charles Resolution 2024-368, and that Council directs staff to draft a letter to Premier Doug Ford, Minister of Municipal Affairs, the Association, AMO, MPP, and other municipalities. All those in favor? Sorry? I did, but you're gonna say all those in favor. Okay, be like that. I wasn't going to actually ask people to put their hands up. Go.
Let the record show Councillor Cooper requested a recorded vote. Councillor Cooper, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Graziano, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Hazelton, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Jarvis, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Predko, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Bochek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Kutsier, how do you vote?
Yes.
Let the record show the motion's carried 4-3.
All right, one more item under whatever the heck we are under. New business, I think.
New business.
Item H, which is request for quotation for water depot, waste depot. I apologize. Wait, I can't even read my own scribble. Waste depot for Go Home Lake. Councillor Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. This resolution motion comes from the output of our waste management meeting the other week. I think that there was a strong reaction from local people when they realized, and I think from councils as well, that when we realized that we had scenario 3 being implemented in our township, which entails lakeside collection for locations that currently have bins. And I think specifically at Go Home Lake, given the volume and the number of cottagers, the logistical coordination for a lakeside collection would be very difficult in that the collection would be on the road in between 2 marinas, and there'd be vehicle traffic, there'd be some water traffic, and things going in multiple directions. One thing that we don't have in our lengthy discussions with the district about waste management and options for the future, or even options for the present, is what would it cost for a waste depot, a solid waste depot. And this motion is asking for the district to come up with a price quote for the township to be able to consider in the future if that was feasible for the Go Home Lake area. And I think understanding that we have future discussions and decisions that would have to be made to actually implement a depot. But I believe there's a 2-year time frame from approval of a depot to implementing. So having a conversation sooner to get a price would potentially help residents, as they'd be looking at least 2 years with lakeside pickup at the current model. And I would just like to make sure we have a longer term plan and vision that we're trying to work towards. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
I'm not against this motion, other than to say that it's one of many solutions that have to be dealt with in terms of our solid waste issues. So to sort of have one set aside is not necessarily going to provide us with the whole picture. So I'd happily support this if it was layered in with all the other costs that will be associated with what our future is going to look like. At the moment, it's a one-off, and if we one-off everything, there's no way of controlling our expenses. And I think we need to see it in the context of our full solution, not just one solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you. So a question for Councillor Predko. I read some of the letters that came in from Go Home Lake, and I think a couple of them were suggesting a possible depot over on the other side of the 400. Did you see some of those?
I did. I believe they're talking about where the Go Home Lake Road used to meet Highway 69 before they built the new overpass. So there's a small section, and I believe there used to be a depot there that is now on potentially First Nations land.
It's sort of halfway between the 400 and where the bins currently are. So it is west of the 400.
So I'm familiar with that, with it, where that could be. I'm just wondering, I'm wondering what the appetite is by the people on Go Home Lake to take their garbage and drive across the 400, perhaps to that gas station. If that fella running the gas station had an appetite to have a private bin service and make a ton of money from a private bin service. Would the residents of Go Home Lake be interested in a short jaunt across the highway? Anyways, that's something for further discussion. I'm not asking for an answer just today. It's just an idea, because I thought I heard from I thought I read in some of the letters that there was an option there. The real point that I wanted to make was I cannot wait for the EPS or EPW committee to get direction, because your resolution says you direct the committee, and I'm thinking, whoa, do we have that power? We can direct the committee?
I think that was potentially wording the
That's great. I love it.
Requests. Sorry.
You've encouraged some editing.
I believe in the editing process that got overlooked from a copy and a paste. Sorry.
Come on, we want to get on the directive.
I would like to direct, but I can't direct.
Commissioner. Okay, Councillor Bochek, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. I think this is the right approach. I endorse this wholeheartedly, and contrary to what Councillor Cooper said, I think the one-off approach is the right approach, because when you address this at district as an item, then they're going to get back to you on that item. But when you get 15 different things coming at them all at once, they tend not to deal with any of it in an expedient amount of time. So with this resolution going forward to district, I believe it's going to be fairly simple for them to give a one-off answer back to the council here at Township of Georgian Bay. But if we dilute it with all the other issues, I don't think we're going to get an immediate response.
I think quite differently from that is that the commissioner, Commissioner Steele knows that this is probably coming, and already wants to look at it. I think what we're asking for here is additional information to help us come up with the overall plan. And I don't think, and I think that this, depending upon what information you get back, we may say this is ridiculous, or we may say this should be part of our plans. But we're not making that decision today.
No, but if I could, we sat down with James. There was 3 of us that sat in a meeting, and they gave us 3 options. And I think this is what this is addressing is option 3, which is what the district seems to be heading towards, does not meet the needs of the Go Home people whatsoever. And I think this is kind of that's why I'm supporting this motion, is so that we get the proper information so that we can come up with a new solution.
They're, in my opinion, their option 3, which is, let me call it temporary, in the sense that it won't be final. I honestly don't believe it'll be anywhere, but it's the default if we don't come up with something. Okay. Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I hate to see things through a glass half empty. However, we have requested data in the past from the District of Muskoka and didn't receive the information that we had sought. However, with that said, this is just simply asking for essentially a costing model as to what it would cost us to have this additional depot. We can figure in how we stitch it into the greater picture at a later point. This is really just asking the district to step up and give us the data that we need for at least to better understand what could be potentially possible for Go Home Lake, and I support that. Although I do find the suggestion on the reserve to be quite interesting, and I wonder whether the reserve is bound by the same ECA requirements as non-reserve marinas and or commercial entities. So with that said, that could be a very interesting consideration for future discussions, but I do support this.
All right, thank you. One comment that I'm just going to make is that recently the district opened up a new waste depot in Gravenhurst, so I think they have a pretty good fresh idea what would be involved, and hopefully that will allow them to address this a little more readily. Councillor Cooper.
Just briefly, I want to make it very clear that I'm not against finding out what it costs to do certain things. That's not what I'm talking about. I just don't want us to act on a onesie basis as we go forward. If we get the information in, wonderful. I'm just cautioning all of us not to move on single solutions without knowing what the larger picture is. That's my concern.
Fair enough.
Otherwise, I support it. Thank you.
So I have moved by Councillor Predko, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved that Council directs the District Municipality of Muskoka's Engineering and Public Works Department to analyze the potential for a solid waste depot in the area of Go Home Lake. And that district evaluates 2 to 3 potential locations considering factors such as environmental impact, land ownership, accessibility, and any other relevant criteria. And the council requests the Commissioner of Engineering and Public Works report back to Township of Georgian Bay Council with findings and recommendations by March 21st, 2025. All those in favor? And that is carried. Now, the only thing remaining on our agenda is closed session. And we have two or three options. One option is if there's no discussion on closed minutes or legal file listing, we can just do that now and end this meeting. Or if we want to go into closed, we can have a lunch break and go into closed, or we can just take a 10-minute break and go into closed and get it all done before lunch. So my first question is, were there any items on closed minutes or the legal file listing anybody wished to discuss? I'm not seeing any hands. So if that's the case, we can pass a motion or two here and shut the meeting down. I move by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved, the council adopts the council closed minutes of October 7th, 2024. All those in favor? Okay. And I have moved by Councillor Predko, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved, the council adopts bylaw 2024-096 to confirm the proceedings of the November 4th, 2024 council meeting. All those in favor? And that is carried. And moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Graziano. Be it resolved, the council does now adjourn at 12:50 p.m. until November 19th, 9 a.m. or to call the chair. All those in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank you very much. But that's a budget meeting.
So we're not going to close?
We're not going to close.
What about the legal?
That's what I asked. I asked very specifically.
Yes.
Well, it's too late now.
December.
Yeah.